Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the cramped, shadowed world of a medieval peasant's hut, where the line between shelter and confinement blurs into the daily grind of survival. You probably never thought about how tiny that space really was, or how every breath, every sound, every creak becomes part of the rhythm of your nights. It's not grand or romantic, no flickering chandeliers or fluffy pillows, but a patchwork of wood, mud, and straw that breathes with the lives of those who call it home. This story doesn't shout. It hides in the nooks, waits in the silence between wind and whisper, and reveals a reality that we often prefer to forget. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a night here without learning to embrace discomfort like a close friend. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Feel free to share your location and local time down below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the muddy village path, the faint glow of a dying sunset slipping behind low hills. Ahead, a small squat structure rises, the typical peasant hut, no more than a single room, with rough uneven walls made of wattle and daub sticks, woven tightly and plastered with mud and straw. The roof thatched with rushes or straw droops, low almost touching your shoulders if you stoop. This humble abode is your fortress and your prison. It's not built for comfort, but for bare-bones protection from the elements. The floor is compacted earth, sometimes strewn with rushes or straw, but hardly plush. There's a central hearth, a small fire pit surrounded by stones, often the only source of warmth and light. No chimney to guide the smoke away. Instead it curls and lingers, fogging the small space and making eyes water. You can almost taste the acrid tang of wood smoke mixed with damp earth. Inside space is so limited that every movement feels choreographed to avoid bumping into something or someone. The hut rarely exceeds 20 square meters, often less housing, not just you, but your entire family, parents, siblings, perhaps even a grandparent or two. Beds are scarce and narrow, made from piles of straw or thin mats, laid atop wooden boards, and often shared shoulder to shoulder. Privacy is a luxury unknown here. The walls bear the marks of everyday life. Charcoal sketches, faded stains from countless meals, and soot-blackened patches near the fire. Outside the single-shuttered window, the village sprawls quietly, but inside the hut hums with the silent tension of crowded survival. You notice the odd placement of everyday objects, pots, tools, and a woven basket, or two stacked neatly, a balancing act to preserve what little floor space there is. The air smells of smoke earth and the faint musk of animals who sometimes sneak inside seeking warmth or food scraps. Despite the simplicity, the hut is a hub of constant activity, with children whispering or whimpering in their straw beds, and an elderly woman humming softly as she weaves by firelight. The door, a rough wooden slab hung on hinges, creaks whenever it moves, letting in bursts of cold air or the occasional sniffle of a stray dog outside. The humble design of the peasant hut reflects the hard, unpredictable rhythms of medieval rural life. Materials are local and cheap because wealth is scarce. Construction is often a community affair, with neighbors helping neighbors raise walls and roofs before retreating to their own similarly Spartan dwellings. These homes are designed to be practical and repairable rather than beautiful or comfortable. The thatch requires regular patching. The mud plaster needs reapplication every few seasons, washed away by rain or cracked by heat. When storms hit the hut, groans and leaks a fragile shield against the whims of weather. Inside, the low ceiling forces you to bend slightly, lending the space an intimate, even oppressive feel. You realize how close everything is. There's barely room to lie flat without elbows knocking into the wall. The walls themselves seem to lean in muffling sounds, but also making the space feel like a cocoon or a trap. The familiar shadows play tricks on your eyes, and every creak or groan of wood or thatch is a reminder that the shelter itself is alive and vulnerable. This environment conditions you to a constant awareness of your body and its limits. Every ache from a hard night on straw or a cramped posture becomes a background noise to your life, something you learn to ignore or accept. Sleep, when it comes, is a brief surrender. You notice the cold drafts slipping through cracks in the walls, chilling exposed skin, and reminding you that warmth is borrowed, fleeting. Blankets are scarce or non-existent, and clothing often serves double duty as nighttime cover. The hut, though small, holds multitudes of discomforts, but also the quiet solidarity of family and shared endurance. Historians still argue whether this cramped existence was primarily a sign of brutal deprivation or a testament to resilience and community survival. Some scholars emphasize the harshness and poverty, painting nights in these huts as near torturous. Others highlight the tight bonds forged in such close quarters, the warmth found not just in the fire, but in the presence of others. Whatever the debate, it's clear that the peasant hut was a world of paradoxes, fragile yet protective, confining, yet alive with human spirit. Imagine settling down for the night in this tiny refuge. The fire's last embers glow dimly, casting flickering shadows on the mud walls. Outside, the village quiets except for a distant dog's barking or the occasional owl's hoot. Inside, the air is thick with smoke and the scent of yesterday's stew simmering still in a pot near the hearth. The children nestle close to parents or siblings seeking warmth and comfort despite the hard floor beneath. You can hear the rustle of straw mattresses and muffled breaths, the soft whisper of wool blankets shifting. It is a delicate balance between warmth and suffocation, safety and claustrophobia. In these moments before sleep, the hut reveals itself as more than just a shelter. It is a container of stories, memories, fears, and hopes. The rough walls seem to hold echoes of past laughter, tears, and whispered prayers. The fire pit at the center is not just a source of heat, but a hearth of shared life where food, stories, and dreams mingle. This small space, so humble and imperfect, is where you belong, where survival is negotiated day by day, night by night. And so as you close your eyes, ready to drift into whatever rest this simple hut allows, you carry with you the rhythm of this life, raw, unvarnished, and stubbornly persistent. The medieval peasant's hut is no cozy retreat. It's a crucible of endurance, a place where human spirit and hardship meet in the quiet dark. Remember this the next time you complain about your mattress or the neighbor's late-night noise. Your ancestors mastered a very different kind of sleep, one that demanded grit, acceptance, and the occasional chuckle at life's absurdities, because even then someone probably whispered, "Well, you probably won't survive this." You roll onto your side, trying to find some relief from the unforgiving surface beneath you. A bed more imagined than real, a pallet of straw hastily bundled into a sack and spread across rough wooden planks. Comfort is a foreign word here, more luxury of castles and monasteries than your humble peasant existence. The mattress, if it can be called that, is little more than dried grasses gathered after harvest, brittle and scratchy, against your skin. You might share this narrow space with a sibling or your aging mother, their presence both a comfort and a source of warmth in the biting cold. But personal space is sacrificed without complaint. Closeness is survival. On rare occasions, a thin blanket made of coarse wool or flax might be draped over you, but often even that is reserved for the youngest children or the very old. Most nights you lie in your threadbare tunic, your body heat mingling with that of your family, creating a fragile bubble of warmth amid the chill seeping through the walls. Your head rests on a roughly stuffed sack or a wooden plank, fashioned into a pillow. Soft cushions are unknown here. Often a rolled-up garment or a bundle of straw substitutes for a proper pillow. The uneven lumps and coarse texture remind you that sleep will be interrupted, but it is enough. Every night you resign yourself to the hard truth that sleep is precious but elusive. Despite the physical discomfort, your body has grown accustomed to these conditions. The ache in your back and stiff limbs become the background hum of your existence. You learn to sleep in short bursts, waking when the fire needs tending or when the cold becomes unbearable. Sometimes dreams visit, but often only as fleeting images before the discomfort drags you back to reality. In contrast, the beds of the wealthier townsfolk or nobility are something from another world, mattresses stuffed with feathers, soft linens, and even curtains to keep out drafts. But you, a peasant, have neither the means nor the luxury for such indulgence. You accept this with a quiet stoicism because complaining would not warm you or soften the straw. The shared sleeping arrangements also reflect the practicalities of village life: heat, conserve children protected, and little room for extravagance. Your bed is not just a place to sleep, it is a communal space where stories are whispered, before darkness fully settles, where fears are shared in the low glow of the dying hearth, and where the boundaries between family members blur into a collective experience of survival. Historians still argue whether these primitive sleeping surfaces contributed significantly to the peasants' health issues, or if paradoxically they fostered resilience and adaptability. Some suggest the hard beds helped build physical toughness, while others point to the increased likelihood of ailments like rheumatism or parasitic infections. Either way, the bed you lie upon is inseparable from the harsh realities of medieval peasant life, a symbol of both endurance and deprivation. The straw mattress, though humble, is a vital part of your nightly ritual, a place where exhaustion briefly overcomes hardship and the hope of waking to another day persists. There's also the curious matter of bedding material. Straw was abundant and cheap, but it also attracted pests. Fleas, lice, and other tiny creatures thrived in these warm nests, turning your bed into a battleground of microscopic invaders. You wake frequently to itchy skin and restless limbs swatting at phantom bites. It's a battle you accept with weary resignation, for there is no alternative. Sometimes families sprinkle herbs like lavender or rue into their bedding to deter pests or mask odors, but these remedies are far from foolproof. You might have heard whispers of using certain plants or oils to keep these pests at bay, though how effective these were remains a matter of folklore and scarce evidence. The very bed meant to provide rest also harbors discomfort and thread a paradox that defines much of your existence. Your nights are often punctuated by the shifting movements of your family, the creak of straw compressed under shifting weight, and the occasional cough or whispered plea for warmth. The thin walls do little to muffle the sounds of a household living in close quarters, the low murmur of prayer, a child's soft sob, or the gentle rasp of an elder's breath. Despite these disturbances, sleep arrives as best it can, guided by your circadian rhythms, which, though unmeasured, respond to the cycles of daylight and labor. The quiet moments before dawn sometimes bring a rare stillness, a temporary truce in the nightly battle against discomfort and fatigue. The size and construction of your sleeping area also reflect broader social realities. Space is a precious commodity. The hut's single room must accommodate cooking, eating, working, sleeping, and storage. There are no separate bedrooms or closets. The same patch of floor might serve as a cooking hearth by day and a sleeping nook by night. You wake to the smells of morning porridge being prepared, the smoke drifting over your head as the family stirs. You might feel a pang of envy for travelers who speak of featherbeds and warm quilts, but such luxuries seem distant as the dawn approaches. Curiously, the concept of bedding hygiene was very different from modern standards. Baths were infrequent, and washing linens was laborious, so bedding might only be cleaned a few times a year, if at all. Dirt, sweat, and the inevitable bodily secretions accumulated, weaving themselves into the fabric of your nightly rest. In some regions, bedding was even stored outside the home, or hung up during the day to air out a practice thought to reduce pests. You may have heard your parents talk about these routines, although explanations often mix practical advice with superstitions. Whether these efforts made much difference remains unclear, but they offered a sense of control in an otherwise unpredictable world. Another fringe tidbit: some peasants believed that sleeping too close to the hearth fire could be dangerous, causing illness, or even attracting evil spirits. So beds were sometimes arranged to avoid the immediate vicinity of the fire, despite the obvious trade-off in warmth. This led to an interesting compromise where you might lie shivering further from the hearth, or risk smoke inhalation closer in. It's one of those medieval dilemmas you don't often see on History Channel documentaries, but was very real to those living it. Of course, what exactly caused sickness was poorly understood, so superstitions filled the gap, influencing how and where you slept. You might wonder about privacy in these shared beds. The concept was alien. The hut's limited space meant no curtains, no partitions. Your personal dreams mingled with the breathing of siblings and parents. Sometimes the elderly would sleep separately on a mat near the door or by the hearth, but often the entire family clustered tightly together, a protective, if uncomfortable, human pile against the night's chill. This closeness could be a source of warmth and safety, but also tension. If one person stirred restlessly or was ill, it disturbed the fragile peace of the group. But no complaints were voiced. This was life, and life demanded acceptance. When you lie awake, your mind drifts to the day's toils. Fields worked livestock, tended chores, unfinished. The hard bed doesn't lull you into forgetfulness, but forces a quiet reckoning. You might try counting sheep or rehearsing prayers whispered by candlelight, hoping to coax sleep. Occasionally, a stray thought sparks a smile or a worry weaving into the fabric of your night. The bed with all its discomforts becomes a place where your body slows, but your mind remains alert, a liminal zone between wakefulness and dreams. Historians still debate how much the harshness of medieval peasant beds shaped the culture of endurance and pragmatism that defined rural communities. Did the daily physical challenges foster a stoic mindset, or did it contribute to shorter life expectancies and chronic ailments? The answers remain elusive, clouded by scarce records and romanticized retellings. What is clear is that the humble peasant bed was less a place of rest and more a battleground where bodies and spirits waged nightly war against hardship. So as you finally settle nestling into your prickly straw mattress, sharing warmth and space with those you love, you can take a small comfort in knowing that even in these harsh conditions, sleep comes grudging, fragmented, but vital. And that strange, scratchy bed becomes your closest ally in the ongoing struggle to greet each dawn with enough strength to face another day. It might not be soft or luxurious, but it is yours, a testament to resilience and the unyielding human will to rest even when the world offers little softness. The night is far from silent here. Instead, it hums with a cacophony of subtle noises that weave together like an uneasy lullaby. You close your eyes, but the chorus of creaks rustles, and distant murmurs refuses to fade. The wattle and daub walls breathe and shift as the cold air pushes in through tiny cracks, causing the wooden beams overhead to groan softly. Outside, the occasional bark of a village dog punctuates the stillness, while somewhere nearby a rooster crows, prematurely reminding everyone that dawn will come, whether they are ready or not. The sounds inside the hut are no less persistent, soft footfalls, the gentle shuffle of restless sleepers turning on their straw beds, the faint scrape of a utensil knocked from its resting place. These noises, rather than disturbing you, become part of the fabric of your nights, a background score to your struggle for rest. The walls themselves seem alive in the darkness. Small creatures, mice rats, and perhaps a hedgehog or two, scurry behind the plaster, their tiny claws scratching a rhythm that echoes through the thin structure. You might hear the scratching grow louder at times, as if the animals are testing your patience, or worse, the sturdiness of your fragile home. It is not unusual for these unwelcome guests to invade your bed sharing warmth, but also their fleas and diseases. You shift uneasily, half expecting to feel their tiny bodies crawling against your skin. The idea of being alone is a comforting illusion. You are never truly solitary in the medieval peasant's hut. The boundary between human and animal blurs, and the night sounds remind you that the hut is a shared ecosystem. Occasionally, the night is punctuated by sharper, more alarming noises. The distant howl of wolves reverberates through the cold air, a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beyond the village borders. Wolves were a real threat in many medieval communities, often blamed for attacking livestock or even people. Their cries pierce the dark like a warning, causing you to tighten your grip on your blanket or huddle closer to your kin. Some nights, drunken quarrels or angry shouts from neighbors carry faintly on the wind, mixing with the natural sounds in a discordant symphony. These human noises remind you that life in the village is as rough and unpredictable as the wilderness surrounding it. Even as you seek rest, the night insists on its presence through this persistent soundscape. Historians still argue whether these constant nocturnal noises made medieval peasants more sensitive to sound, or whether they simply adapted to this noisy environment, developing a kind of sleep that allowed for rest despite interruptions. Some scholars propose that the peasant's sleep was more fragmented and lighter than our modern expectations, punctuated by brief awakenings in response to environmental cues. Others suggest a deeper, more adaptive sleep evolved, allowing survival in such unpredictable conditions. Whatever the truth, it is clear that the medieval night was far from the peaceful, silent darkness we imagine today. Inside the hut, the sounds of the hearth crackling and the occasional snap of burning wood add another layer to the night's atmosphere. The fire is your heart, your warmth, and your light in the darkness, but it also demands constant attention. The popping of embers and the faint hiss of smoke remind you that the fire is alive and unpredictable, ready to comfort or threaten. Sometimes small sparks leap up and vanish, drawing your eyes away from sleep as you hope they won't ignite the dry thatch above. This uneasy dance between safety and danger is a defining feature of the medieval night. You learn early to respect the fire, to keep it fed but not overfed, and to watch for signs that it might turn from friend to foe. Beyond the hut, the village's quiet heartbeat continues. The rhythmic sound of someone fetching water from a nearby well, the rustling of a cat stalking prey, or the distant tolling of a church bell marking the hour, all these noises mingle and blend into a rich tapestry. At times you can hear the faint cadence of a lute or flute as villagers indulge in a rare moment of festivity, reminding you that life continues despite hardship. But more often, the night is a time of waiting and endurance, a shared experience of vulnerability and hope. You may find yourself chuckling quietly at the absurdity of some sounds. That rat that scurries across the hearthboard for the third time tonight, as if it's auditioning for a medieval pest show, or the way the wind whistles, just so sounding eerily like a banshee's wail, fueling local ghost stories whispered by candlelight. Despite the fear, such tales inspire humor and superstition, go hand in hand, making the night both frightening and oddly familiar. Your ancestors were no strangers to mixing practical reality with a splash of imagination to explain the unknown. This blend of fact and folklore colors the auditory landscape you inhabit. There's also the matter of how you and your family interact with these sounds. Rather than fleeing from the noise, you learn to embrace it, weaving it into the fabric of your nights. A sudden creak isn't a cause for panic, but a reminder of the hut's living presence. The rustle of animals becomes a natural accompaniment to your breathing. You might even find comfort in the regularity of these sounds, a signal that life continues despite the hardships of the day. It's a far cry from the sterile silence of a modern bedroom, but no less real or essential. Another quirky detail is the use of noise as protection. Some peasants believe that making noise before bed through prayer songs or clattering objects could ward off evil spirits or bad luck. This practice might seem odd today, but it was a way to impose order on the unknown and create a sense of safety. These rituals varied from village to village, but underscored the profound human desire to feel secure in the vulnerable hours of the night. Whether these efforts had any real effect or not, they shaped the way medieval peasants experienced darkness and sound. You might also hear the occasional midnight visitor, a traveling merchant, a wayward villager returning late, or even a mysterious stranger seeking shelter. Their footsteps tap out a hesitant rhythm on the dirt path, stirring conversations or whispered warnings inside the hut. The village is small, and strangers are rare, so their presence is both intriguing and unsettling. Sometimes the door opens to reveal a face, a friend or neighbor bringing news or a helping hand. Other times, the unknown slips through a shadow, passing silently and adding to the night's sense of mystery. Historians still debate the extent to which such nighttime activity influenced social bonds in medieval villages. Was the night a time of isolation and fear, or of communal connection and vigilance? Some argue that the constant sharing of space and sounds fostered tight-knit communities where everyone looked out for one another. Others suggest that the night was also a time when mistrust and suspicion thrived, especially in the absence of formal law enforcement. What is certain is that sound was a crucial part of social life, signaling danger, comfort, and community. As dawn approaches, the night's chorus begins to fade. The first light seeps through the cracks in the walls, and the animals outside grow restless. You might hear roosters crowing in earnest, or the stirrings of the village coming alive. The cacophony of the night gives way to the softer sounds of morning preparations, the clatter of wooden utensils, hushed conversations, and the scrape of tools being readied for the day. It is a slow transition as the world shifts from darkness to light, from rest to labor. So as you lie there, eyes half closed, the night's sounds mingling with your thoughts and dreams, you realize that this is the true soundtrack of medieval peasant life, raw, persistent, and deeply woven into the human experience. The night does not promise peace, but it offers a space for reflection, endurance, and connection. And perhaps that is enough. You shiver as the cold creeps in, uninvited and relentless, slipping through every crack and crevice of your hut's humble construction. The walls fashioned from wattle and daub, a lattice of woven sticks plastered with mud and straw, offer scant defense against the damp chill that clings to your bones. Unlike the stone castles of the nobility, your home breathes with the seasons expanding and contracting with humidity and temperature, leaving you vulnerable to the whims of the weather. In winter, when the sun sets early and the wind howls through the village, this chill becomes a constant companion, making the night feel endless, and your small bed an icy slab. You huddle closer to your family, hoping the shared body heat will stave off the biting cold that seeps through floorboards and roof thatch alike. There's no insulation beyond the thick mud walls, and those too have their flaws, cracks, and holes develop over time, inviting gusts of icy air that you feel on your skin despite layers of coarse woolen clothing. The thatched roof, though a marvel of local craft, leaks when the rain falls hard, dripping persistently in certain spots and turning the dirt floor into a muddy mess. Dampness clings to everything: your clothes, your bedding, even the walls seem wet to the touch. This moisture breeds mold and rot, threatening not just your comfort, but your health. The air is heavy and cold, a far cry from the cozy warmth you might imagine in a hearth-lit home. Your attempts to combat the cold are limited and often futile. The central hearth provides some heat, but open fires consume precious fuel quickly, and you must ration wood carefully, especially in lean seasons. The smoke from the fire, which curls lazily into the low ceiling, helps repel insects and provides a semblance of warmth, but it also irritates your eyes and lungs. You might wrap yourself in a patched cloak or share a threadbare blanket, but these offer little protection against the pervasive chill. Some villagers use dried animal skins or furs if they have them, but such luxuries are rare for peasants more often found in wealthier households. You resign yourself to the cold as a nightly ordeal, part of the price paid for survival. The cold is more than an annoyance. It shapes your entire night. You wake frequently, teeth chattering or muscles stiffening, your breath misting in the air as you exhale. It makes sleep shallow and restless, and you find yourself longing for the brief moments when the fire flares and the warmth floods the room. These moments are precious and fleeting, like sparks of comfort in the dark. You learn to move minimally during the night to conserve body heat, but the hard bed and cramped space make finding a comfortable position nearly impossible. Your hands and feet ache from the cold, and you hope morning comes quickly. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants suffered more from cold-related illnesses due to these harsh conditions, or if their bodies adapted over generations to withstand the chill. Some studies suggest that chronic exposure to cold might have affected mortality rates, contributing to illnesses like pneumonia or rheumatism. Others highlight the toughness of rural populations, pointing to their endurance and survival despite the odds. Either way, the cold was a formidable adversary, one that shaped the daily lives and physical realities of medieval peasants. In an effort to battle the damp and chill, you might hear stories of villagers plastering their walls with animal fat or lime to seal gaps and repel moisture. Some spread rushes or straw thickly on the floors to provide a buffer against the cold earth below. These techniques are passed down through generations, local knowledge born from necessity rather than scientific understanding. The smell of wet straw mixed with smoke and earth becomes a constant, grounding you in the rhythms of rural life. You learn to accept these scents as part of your nighttime world, even as they remind you of the ever-present damp. Sometimes villagers burn herbs or aromatic woods in the fire to freshen the air or provide mild warmth, though such luxuries are reserved for special occasions due to scarcity. You might be familiar with the scent of burning rosemary or juniper, believed to purify the hut and ward off illness. These traditions blur the line between practical heating and superstition, a hallmark of medieval peasant culture. Whether these efforts had tangible effects is uncertain, but they offer psychological comfort against the harshness outside and within. Your clothing plays a crucial role in protecting you from the cold. You might sleep in layers: a linen shirt beneath a woolen tunic, woolen hose covering your legs, and a coarse cloak or shawl draped over you. These garments are heavy, itchy, and never quite warm enough, but they are your best defense. Footwear is rarely worn indoors, but thick socks or wrapped strips of cloth provide some insulation. The more layers, the less freedom to move. But freedom is a small price for warmth. You notice how even the oldest among you wear patched but well-worn wool, their bodies accustomed to the constant chill. One quirky detail you may have heard is the medieval belief that exposing your feet while sleeping could cause illness or nightmares. For this reason, feet were often wrapped carefully or tucked beneath layers. Mothers warned children against kicking off blankets, mixing practical advice with superstitions about night demons or cold spirits. This blend of folklore and necessity colors your nighttime habits, reminding you how much belief and survival intertwine. The hearth fire, while a source of warmth, demands respect and vigilance. You learn to keep the fire small and steady overnight, enough to provide heat but not so much as to consume your limited fuel supply. Too large a fire risks filling the room with choking smoke or igniting the dry thatch above. Conversely, a dying fire spells a return to bitter cold. This delicate balance governs your night, a constant negotiation between comfort and risk. Sometimes you'll find yourself awake simply to tend the flames, coaxing embers back to life, or adding small sticks from the woodpile. The cold and dampness also influence social behaviors. In colder months, the family tends to huddle closer together, sharing warmth and reinforcing bonds of care and protection. This physical closeness, while cramped, is a source of psychological comfort, mitigating the harshness of the environment. You might hear hushed stories or prayers whispered to keep spirits warm as much as bodies. In contrast, summer nights, though warmer, bring other challenges, but the cold winter is the true test of endurance. Historians still debate the precise impact of medieval building techniques on cold exposure. Some argue that the lack of proper insulation and heating contributed significantly to winter mortality and illness. Others highlight the resourcefulness of peasants who used every available material and tradition to mitigate the worst effects. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, a mix of hardship and ingenious adaptation. As dawn nears, the cold gradually recedes with the rising sun, promising a brief reprieve and the chance to warm your stiff limbs. But for now, the chill remains, wrapping the hut in a silent, icy embrace. You pull your cloak tighter and close your eyes, surrendering to whatever rest the cold night allows, knowing that come morning you'll rise to face another day, shaped by the relentless grip of winter's chill. You shift uncomfortably as you become aware of the relentless, unwelcome presence of rodents and pests invading your humble hut. These tiny invaders, from scuttling mice to biting fleas and lice, are as much a part of your nightly experience as the cold or the fire's smoky haze. The thin walls and creaky wooden floorboards offer little barrier against these creatures who find their way through every crack and crevice, drawn by the warmth food scraps and shelter your home provides. You share your bed with them more often than you care to admit, their tiny bodies crawling in the straw mattress, biting and burrowing, turning your fragile sleep into a restless, scratchy ordeal. This is a nightly battle, invisible, but deeply felt, a reminder that your sanctuary is never truly your own. The presence of these pests is not just an annoyance, but a serious health hazard. Fleas and lice carry diseases that can wreak havoc on the community, and their bites cause itching and discomfort that disturb sleep. You might recall the whispers of the dreaded plague spreading through villages, its origin sometimes traced to the very rats and fleas nesting in peasant homes. The uncleanliness of the living conditions compounded by these infestations contributes to a cycle of sickness and hardship. Yet, despite the discomfort, these pests are tolerated as an inevitable part of life. There are few effective ways to combat them, and the tools or knowledge to do so are scarce. Historically, many peasants turned to natural remedies and folk practices to reduce infestations. Burning certain herbs like rosemary, lavender, or wormwood was thought to repel bugs, while washing bedding in boiling water was an occasional but taxing task reserved for rare moments of cleanliness. Some families believed that scattering dried tansy or pennyroyal among their straw beds could keep fleas at bay, though how effective these measures were remains a topic of debate among scholars. These attempts at control reflect a blend of practical knowledge and superstition, born from desperate attempts to protect oneself from an ever-present threat. Rodents are another unwelcome guest in the medieval peasant's hut. Mice and rats are drawn to stored grains, kitchen scraps, and the general warmth of your home. Their nocturnal activities add to the night's soundtrack, a soft scratching behind walls, the rustling of tiny feet, and the occasional squeak that startles even the weariest sleepers. Sometimes you awake to find evidence of their visits: chewed sacks, scattered grains, or droppings near your feet. In some communities, cats are kept as pest control, their silent prowling and sharp claws serving as a deterrent. But not every household can afford such an animal, and even the presence of cats is no guarantee of freedom from rodents. Despite these challenges, the relationship between peasants and pests is complex. On the one hand, these creatures threaten food supplies and health. On the other, they are embedded in the rural ecosystem, a part of daily life that is hard to disentangle from human activity. The close quarters and shared space mean that you have little respite, and pests adapt to your presence as easily as you adapt to theirs. This uneasy coexistence is one more test of endurance. The psychological impact of these infestations should not be underestimated. The constant itching, the knowledge of unwelcome guests in your bed, and the visible damage to your belongings weigh on your mind. You learn to accept the discomfort as part of the package, normalizing what would be intolerable in other circumstances. This acceptance reflects a broader theme in medieval peasant life: the necessity to endure hardship with as much grace as possible, lest despair take root. Adding a touch of the bizarre, some peasants believed in the existence of bedbugs, not just as pests, but as malevolent spirits or omens. Folklore held that these creatures could be sent by witches or evil forces to torment sleepers, weaving a supernatural layer over the very real physical discomfort. Rituals, prayers, or charms might be used to protect against such attacks, blending practical pest control with spiritual defense. Whether these beliefs helped or hindered the fight against infestations is uncertain, but they underscore the fusion of belief and experience characteristic of the medieval mindset. You might find yourself recalling the wisdom of an elder who insisted that a good shake of the bedding before sleep could dislodge some of the pests, or that sleeping with a piece of garlic or a sprig of herb tucked under your pillow might keep nightmares and bugs at bay. These folk remedies, while often ineffective by modern standards, provided psychological comfort and a sense of agency in an otherwise powerless situation. They also reinforced communal knowledge shared in hushed tones around fires or in the market square. The pests also affected the broader social and economic fabric. Grain stores had to be protected carefully to prevent rodent damage that could threaten a family's food supply for the coming months. Infestations could spread rapidly through crowded villages, making pest control a communal concern. However, the means to combat these problems were limited and often ineffective, leaving communities to rely on tradition, superstition, and sheer resilience. At night, as you lie awake, scratching a flea bite or listening to the scurrying of rodents, you might find humor in the absurdity of it all. The idea that your bed is not just a place of rest, but a battlefield where tiny enemies wage war against your skin seems almost comical if it weren't so relentless. Some villagers joked about making peace with the pests, naming them, or imagining them as tiny house guests who simply overstayed their welcome. This gallows humor was a coping mechanism, a way to endure what you could not change. Historians still debate the extent to which these infestations influenced medieval health and mortality. Some argue that poor sanitation and the prevalence of pests contributed significantly to disease outbreaks, while others point to other factors like nutrition and hygiene practices as more critical. The role of pests as disease vectors, especially in spreading the Black Death, is well documented, but the everyday impact on peasants' lives is harder to quantify. Nonetheless, it is clear that these creatures were an inseparable part of the medieval domestic environment. In your small hut, the pests serve as a constant reminder that your shelter, though vital, is far from a sanctuary. They force you to adapt, to endure itching and sleeplessness, and to accept that comfort is fleeting. Yet despite the hardships, you carry on finding moments of peace between the bites and scratches. Moments when the presence of family and the flickering firelight push the pests to the edges of your awareness. Your bed, infested and uncomfortable, remains a place of rest and renewal, a testament to human resilience in the face of relentless adversity. The warm glow of the hearth flickers in the center of the hut, casting wavering shadows on the rough earthen walls as you settle in for the night. The fire is the heart of your home, a source of light warmth and cooked food, but it is also a constant hazard that governs every decision you make once darkness falls. Open flames, while comforting, pose a terrifying risk. Thatched roofs, wooden beams, and straw bedding are highly flammable, and a single careless spark can reduce your entire livelihood to ashes in moments. You learn early that vigilance is not optional. It is a matter of survival. Every crackle and pop from the fire demands your attention, a reminder that the difference between warmth and destruction is razor thin. You arrange the logs carefully, coaxing a steady flame that will burn through the night, but not flare out of control. Too small a fire means freezing cold. Too large invites disaster. The smoke rises slowly toward the low ceiling, filling the room with a dense haze that stings your eyes and throat. You cough softly, but accept it because the alternative is worse. Some nights, the smoke feels so thick that you swear it will choke you, but the fire's heat seeps into your bones, a balm against the relentless chill pressing in from outside. You might find yourself positioning your bed just far enough from the hearth to feel the warmth without being overwhelmed by smoke. This delicate balance is a nightly negotiation, honed by experience and necessity. Historians still argue whether the risk of fire was the greatest danger peasants faced indoors, or if disease and starvation were more lethal threats. While the threat of a fire destroying a home was ever present, it was relatively rare compared to chronic poverty and illness. Yet the fear was enough to influence architectural choices, nightly routines, and even superstitions. You may have heard tales of entire villages wiped out by a single blaze, stories passed down with grim warnings. This knowledge lingers in the collective memory, shaping your caution around fire. Open hearths were often situated in the middle of the hut, without a chimney to channel smoke outside. Instead, the smoke found its way through the thatch or an opening in the roof, filling the space with a persistent haze. This smoke, while unpleasant, helped repel insects and pests, serving as a crude but effective pest control. It also contributed to the characteristic smell of the medieval peasant's home, a mixture of wood smoke, damp earth, and cooked food that is strangely comforting despite its harshness. You might recall the scent as a defining feature of your childhood, a sensory anchor linking you to family and place. The firelight creates a cozy atmosphere despite the discomforts. Shadows dance on the walls, and the flickering glow softens the harsh edges of your surroundings. It is by this light that stories are told, prayers whispered, and plans made for the next day. The fire acts as a social focal point, drawing family members together in shared warmth and companionship. You find comfort in this gathering even as you remain alert to the fire's dangers. The crackling sounds and occasional sparks are part of the nightly ritual, a companion to your fading consciousness. Sometimes the fire reveals little moments of humor or absurdity. You might laugh quietly as sparks shoot upward, momentarily resembling tiny stars before disappearing into the dark. Or you might hear a sibling's exaggerated cough or a whispered joke about the fire dragon living in the hearth. These small moments of levity break the monotony of hardship, reminding you that even in struggle, human spirit finds light. It's these flickers of joy that make the cold, smoky nights bearable. Your relationship with the hearth is complex. It demands respect and care, but also offers security and comfort. You learn the rhythms of fire building, understanding how different woods burn, and how to keep embers alive through the night. Often you wake briefly to stir the ashes, or add kindling, ensuring the fire doesn't die out or become too fierce. This intermittent tending shapes your sleep pattern, fragmenting rest, but keeping you alive and warm. The fire's presence is a constant reminder that survival is an active, ongoing effort, even in the supposedly restful hours. The risk of fire also gives rise to superstitions and rituals. You may have heard elders warn against whistling near the hearth, believing it could summon evil spirits or cause the fire to go out. Some families perform simple blessings or prayers to protect their home from flames, blending practical caution with spiritual belief. These customs offer a psychological shield, helping to manage the ever-present fear of losing everything in a blaze. Whether these rituals held power beyond the mind is uncertain, but they added a layer of meaning and control to an unpredictable danger. Outside the hut, you know that a fire would not only destroy your home, but jeopardize the entire village. Thatched roofs packed close together can ignite easily, allowing flames to spread rapidly. Fires were the bane of medieval settlements, and many communities lived in fear of a stray spark turning neighbor against neighbor in panic and loss. Fire brigades, as we know them, did not exist. Instead, villagers relied on buckets of water, wet blankets, and quick reflexes to stop the spread. You might recall tales of neighbors banding together to form a human chain to pass water, their voices hoarse from shouting warnings and encouragement. The fire's central role also influenced the layout of the hut and village. Huts were spaced as far apart as practical to reduce fire risk, though overcrowding was often unavoidable due to economic constraints. Inside the hut, the hearth's placement dictated where beds and furniture could be arranged, affecting daily life and sleep. Your night's rest, then, is intertwined with these architectural and social factors, all shaped by the omnipresent threat and comfort of fire. Sometimes the fire's light reveals unexpected visitors, mice darting across the floor, or insects attracted to the warmth. You might shoo them away, or simply tolerate their presence, knowing they are part of the ecosystem as much as you are. The fire, despite its dangers, creates a microenvironment that supports life in all its messy complexity. As you drift towards sleep, the fire's glow fades with the embers, and the hut settles into deeper darkness. The warmth lingers, a soft pulse beneath the chill, comforting you as dreams begin to form. You feel the fragile safety of this flame, the thin line between life and loss, and take solace in the knowledge that as long as it burns, you and your family endure. The fire is both protector and risk, friend and foe, a symbol of the precarious balance of medieval peasant life. The moment you step inside your peasant hut, your nose is greeted by a complex layered aroma that defines the very essence of your nightly refuge. It's a pungent mix of smoke, sweat, animals, and cooked food that lingers in the air long after the embers have died down. This smell, far from the sanitized scents of modern homes, is the invisible signature of your life, rough, earthy, and undeniably real. It is a scent that tells stories of the day's labor, the meals shared, the closeness of family, and the rawness of survival. You inhale deeply, or perhaps you don't notice consciously anymore, but it is always there, wrapping around you like a second skin as you prepare to settle in for the night. First, there is the unmistakable bite of smoke, thick, acrid, and persistent. The open hearth, the heart of your home, burns constantly to stave off the cold and cook meals, sending curls of wood smoke upward to the low ceiling. The smoke clings stubbornly to your clothes, hair, and skin, mingling with the dampness that seeps through the hut's thin walls. Sometimes your eyes sting, and you cough softly, but you accept the haze because it means warmth. This smoky scent permeates every corner, a reminder of the fire's dual nature as comfort and irritant. Over time, you've become immune to much of its sting, though visitors from the town might wrinkle their noses at the intensity. Layered beneath the smoke is the earthy, musty scent of the hut itself. Damp clay walls, mud floors, and thatched roofing. The smell is cool and organic, reminiscent of the fields and forests that surround your village. It carries a hint of moss and decomposing straw, sometimes mingled with the faint odor of mold or mildew in wetter seasons. This earthiness anchors you to your environment, a constant reminder that your home is built directly from the land you till and depend upon. It is a humble scent, far from luxurious, but honest and unpretentious. Interwoven with these natural aromas is the unmistakable musk of human life, sweat body oils, and the inevitable odors of long days and limited bathing. You and your family share this scent, a tangible sign of the physical work, the closeness, and the daily grind. Given the rarity of regular washing, especially in colder months, this human musk is strong and unfiltered. Yet it is a familiar and strangely comforting presence, a reminder of togetherness in cramped quarters. You might be surprised at how quickly this scent seeps into fabric, skin, and hair, making cleanliness a challenging pursuit. Added to this mix is the odor of animals, both livestock and pests. Chickens, goats, or a pig may share space in or near the hut, and their presence adds a faint but distinct note of manure, feathers, and fur. This smell is earthy, but also pungent, mingling with the dampness and smoke to create a potent sensory cocktail. Sometimes you catch the faint skitter of rodents, or the sharp tang of fleas nearby. The animals, while sources of food and income, also bring their own brand of odor that you learn to accept as part of your domestic reality. Finally, there's the savory aroma of food, hearty stews, bubbling over the fire, freshly baked bread from a communal oven, or the smoky tang of dried meat hanging from a hook. These scents offer a fleeting but powerful sense of comfort and nourishment amid the other harsher odors. The smell of cooking fills the hut during waking hours and lingers faintly even after the meal is done, reminding you of the day's labors and small rewards. You might savor this scent in memory as you drift towards sleep, hungry or full aware that food is never guaranteed. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants were more accustomed to living with these intense smells than modern people could bear, or if their noses simply adapted over time. Some argue that strong odors contributed to social perceptions of poverty and uncleanliness, while others emphasize that these smells were natural byproducts of rural life and not necessarily seen as unpleasant. What is clear is that scent was an integral part of the medieval sensory world, shaping experience as much as sight or sound. Your relationship with these smells is complex. At times they overwhelm and irritate. At others they evoke memory, security, and identity. You learn to differentiate between the comforting aroma of a well-tended fire and the warning stench of damp mold or rot. You recognize the difference between the savory scent of a cooked meal and the mustiness of spoiled food, understanding that these olfactory cues carry vital information. The smells guide your actions, informing when to clean bedding, repair walls, or seek fresh air. There's also a social dimension to these odors. Visitors might comment on the strength of your hut's scent, often unfavorably highlighting class distinctions between rural peasants and wealthier townsfolk who enjoyed cleaner, more fragrant homes. Within the village, however, these smells are normalized and carry less stigma. They signify life, labor, and continuity. You might even take pride in the aroma of your home, seeing it as a badge of hard work and authenticity. Interestingly, medieval peasants employed natural fragrances to mitigate some of the harsher smells. Herbs like lavender, rosemary, and thyme were hung near the hearth or woven into bedding to freshen the air and deter pests. Burning aromatic woods or plants was a common practice during special occasions or seasonal rituals. These fragrant touches offered brief respites and enhanced the sensory experience of the hut, blending practicality with tradition. Though scarce, such scents were treasured luxuries in your otherwise austere environment. Sometimes you catch a whiff of scent carried in from outside, a fresh breeze scented with pine or wildflowers, the damp earth after rain, or the smoky haze of distant village fires. These occasional intrusions bring a fleeting sense of the wider world beyond your cramped walls, reminding you that life extends beyond the hut's boundaries. At night, these smells mingle with the indoor aromas, creating a rich tapestry of sensory impressions that shape your memories and dreams. The smell of your hut, with all its contradictions and complexities, becomes a part of your identity. It connects you to family, community, and the rhythms of rural life. You might not consciously notice it every day, but it lingers in your mind's nose, returning to you in moments of nostalgia or distress. This olfactory landscape is a silent storyteller, conveying tales of endurance, hardship, and belonging that words alone cannot capture. As you settle deeper into your straw mattress, the mingling scents envelope you, grounding you in your place and time. Despite the discomforts and challenges they represent, these smells are home. They remind you that survival is not only about shelter and warmth, but about inhabiting a space filled with life in all its raw, unfiltered forms. You breathe in deeply, accepting this fragrant reality, ready to face whatever the night holds, with the familiar aromas as your companions. In the cramped quarters of your hut, the closeness of your family is both a comfort and a challenge. The limited space, barely enough for a single bed, let alone several means you share warm stories, and sometimes even worries in ways that modern life seldom allows. Your parents, siblings, perhaps even grandparents huddle together in the same small room, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder on piles of straw mattresses and rough cloths. This proximity fosters an intimacy that is raw and unfiltered. Privacy is a concept known only in whispers or in dreams of other lives. Yet in this closeness, you find safety from the biting cold and the dangers of the outside world. There is strength in numbers, and in sharing breath and warmth, you stave off the night's chill. You notice the rhythm of breathing around you, a chorus of life that soothes and grounds you as you drift toward sleep. The steady rise and fall of chest, the soft rustling of clothing, and the occasional sigh or whispered word remind you that you are not alone in this world. Your sister shifts slightly, her arm brushing your side, and you feel a sudden spark of connection. In these moments, the hut becomes a sanctuary not only from the elements, but from the loneliness that can creep in during dark nights. You learn early that family is your fortress, a wall built of skin and bone that shields you from despair. Yet this closeness is not without its trials. The lack of personal space means that tensions, long-simmering frustrations, and worries can bubble to the surface in confined quarters. Small irritations, a snore, a restless child, or an accidental elbow can awaken tempers or sleeplessness. You have witnessed whispered arguments over meager resources or unspoken grief over hardships too heavy to name aloud. Still, these moments of friction are fleeting, smoothed over by shared love and the recognition that survival depends on cooperation. The family bond is as necessary as the straw mattress beneath you. The hut's limited space also forces you to adjust your physical posture and movements, especially when resting or sleeping. You learn to curl tightly, conserving heat and space, minimizing your footprint to avoid disturbing others. Nights are spent in careful choreography, each person adapting to the other's presence. You may have heard stories of children sleeping in piles for warmth, or elders placed strategically near the hearth. These sleeping arrangements are practical, born from necessity rather than choice, but they teach you lessons about sacrifice and interdependence. Historians still debate whether this cramped living contributed to stronger familial ties or exacerbated social tensions within peasant communities. Some argue that close quarters fostered deep connections and mutual support, while others suggest that constant proximity increased stress and conflict. Whatever the case, it is undeniable that shared living space shaped medieval family life in profound ways, influencing daily routines, social roles, and emotional bonds. In the darkness, voices are hushed but present. You might hear your mother's soft lullabies, your father's murmured prayers, or your siblings' whispered dreams. These sounds thread through the night like a comforting tapestry, reinforcing the sense of belonging. Storytelling often occurs in these moments before sleep, tales of saints, heroes, or village legends, passed down orally to entertain, educate, and inspire. These narratives serve as emotional bridges connecting generations and preserving cultural memory in an age before widespread literacy. The shared space also means that illnesses and ailments are communal concerns. When one family member suffers, everyone feels the impact physically, emotionally, and economically. You remember nights when a feverish child cried out and the family rallied with whispered prayers, herbal remedies, or simply comforting presence. The hut's confined air, while warm, can also exacerbate sickness, making care both urgent and difficult. This interdependence underscores the fragile balance of medieval peasant life, where individual health is inseparable from collective well-being. Your clothing doubles as bedding warmth, and sometimes even a makeshift barrier between sleepers. Layers of rough linen and wool provide some insulation, but add to the bulk in cramped conditions. You've noticed how garments are shared or borrowed in times of need, reflecting the close-knit nature of your family unit. Clothes are patched and mended, handed down through siblings, each thread telling a story of endurance and adaptation. This recycling of resources is a daily practice born from scarcity, but also from love and respect for what sustains you. The family's role extends beyond warmth and comfort to include the sharing of duties before sleep and upon waking. Before settling down, you might help gather water, tend animals, or prepare simple meals. These tasks, though small, are woven into the fabric of family life and shared according to age and ability. You understand that your survival depends on each member's contribution, reinforcing a sense of responsibility and belonging. The night is not just a time of rest, but a pause in the ongoing labor that defines your existence. Sometimes the closeness fosters quiet moments of tenderness, An arm draped over a sibling's shoulder, a whispered goodnight, or the gentle hum of a familiar tune. These small acts remind you that even amid hardship, love persists. The hut becomes more than shelter. It is a vessel of memory, emotion, and identity. You carry these experiences in your heart, a private sanctuary within the public hardship of village life. Despite the cramped quarters, you may sometimes crave solitude, a fleeting space to gather your thoughts, or simply breathe without interruption. Such moments are rare and precious, found in the early dawn, before others awaken, or in the quietest hours of the night. You might step outside briefly, feeling the cool air on your face, the village still cloaked in darkness and silence. This solitary communion with the world beyond your hut provides a sense of balance and perspective. The family's shared experience also shapes your understanding of roles and hierarchies. Elders are respected and cared for their wisdom, guiding daily life. Children learn from observation and participation, absorbing traditions and responsibilities. Men and women's duties intertwine yet differ, reflecting societal norms and survival needs. These dynamics play out continuously within the hut's close quarters, teaching you lessons about cooperation, resilience, and identity. Historians still examine how the intimate living conditions of medieval peasants influenced social structures and emotional lives. Some suggest that such closeness reinforced patriarchal authority or gender roles, while others emphasize the flexibility and mutual support that emerged in daily practice. Regardless, the family's physical and emotional proximity remains a defining feature of medieval rural existence. As sleep finally descends, you find comfort in the presence of your loved ones, their warmth a shield against the night's uncertainties. The cramped space, though challenging, binds you in an unspoken pact of survival and solidarity. In this small hut amid the straw and smoke, you learn that closeness is both a burden and a blessing, an enduring testament to the human capacity for connection amid hardship. The notion of hygiene before sleep in your medieval peasant hut is a delicate subject, one shaped more by necessity and superstition than by any concept of cleanliness as we understand it today. Bathing is a rare luxury reserved for the warmest months or special occasions, so nights often find you settling into your straw mattress, still coated with the sweat, dirt, and dust accumulated from a full day of labor in the fields or tending animals. Water is precious, and fetching it from the village well or stream requires effort and time, so washing your body or clothes daily is simply not feasible. Instead, you rely on rituals and makeshift practices to feel clean enough before sleep, blending practicality with beliefs passed down through generations. Your evening routine might include a quick rinse of hands and face in a basin of cool water. But beyond that, you often rely on brushing off the worst grime with a coarse cloth or shaking out your garments. Dirt ingrains itself into the fibers of your clothes, and clothes become almost an extension of your skin, worn until they can no longer be patched or repaired. This layering of sweat and earth is a physical testament to your toil and endurance. You and your family share bedding and sleeping areas, which compounds the challenges of maintaining hygiene. Mattresses stuffed with straw, seldom cleaned or replaced, collect dirt, pests, and bodily secretions, creating an environment that modern sensibilities might call unsanitary, but which you accept as part of life. Historians still debate to what extent medieval peasants understood and practiced hygiene, and how this affected health outcomes. Some argue that lack of regular bathing and poor sanitation contributed heavily to disease spread, while others suggest that natural behaviors and environmental exposure helped build immunity. You might recall stories from elders warning against frequent washing, believing that water could weaken the body's defenses or invite illness if done improperly. These beliefs highlight a tension between practical knowledge and superstition that permeates daily life. The scarcity of clean water also means that washing your feet, hands, or face before bed is often minimal. You might use herbal infusions or rough cloths to freshen up, particularly if you suffer from itching or discomfort caused by pests. Certain herbs such as rosemary, lavender, or thyme are prized not only for their pleasant scent, but for their supposed medicinal properties, used in small sachets tucked into bedding or worn as simple garlands. These botanical remedies serve as your closest allies against the grime and pests that are constant companions. Their aroma mingles with the earth and smoke, creating a complex olfactory landscape that marks your personal hygiene ritual. The night air inside the hut can feel stale, heavy with smoke and humidity. Ventilation is minimal, and the shared sleeping space makes fresh air a scarce commodity. You might crack the door slightly or open a small window to invite a breeze, but doing so risks letting in the cold and more pests. This balancing act between fresh air and warmth shapes your nighttime comfort and health. It also influences how odors develop inside the hut, mixing body scents, cooking smells, smoke, and earth into a potent blend that lingers until the next fire is lit or the sun's warmth reaches in. Washing bedding is an occasional arduous task. Straw mattresses might be taken outside to be beaten or aired out during dry sunny days, but this is not done frequently. The coarse linen sheets, or woolen blankets if you have them, are washed when possible, often once or twice a year. This infrequency means that bedding harbors not only dirt and sweat, but also the pests that plague your nights. You might recall the ritual of shaking out bedding in the early morning to reduce flea populations, a practice learned through observation and passed down orally. Though these efforts are imperfect, they represent a continuous struggle to maintain some semblance of cleanliness in difficult circumstances. Personal grooming before sleep is similarly minimal. Hair is brushed with simple wooden combs, but washing is infrequent. You might use herbal rinses or oils when you can afford them, but generally hair and skin bear the marks of long days outdoors. Nails grow thick and dirty hands, calloused and cracked from work. Despite these hardships, you take pride in maintaining what care you can, recognizing hygiene as a form of self-respect and a way to protect your family. These small acts of care provide psychological comfort amid the physical challenges. There are also superstitions tied to hygiene and sleep. Some believe that going to bed unwashed invites bad luck or spirits, while others think that washing before sleep can wash away dreams or blessings. You might have heard of rituals involving washing hands 3 times or sprinkling water around the bed to ward off evil. These practices reflect the medieval worldview where the physical and spiritual realms intertwine, and cleanliness takes on meanings beyond the purely physical. Shared sleeping spaces also complicate notions of cleanliness. When multiple family members sleep in close quarters, the transfer of dirt, sweat, and pests is inevitable. You might notice the lingering scent of another's skin or the telltale signs of lice passed among siblings. These realities demand tolerance and acceptance, reinforcing the family's interconnectedness. The hut becomes a microcosm of human proximity, where boundaries blur and personal hygiene is a communal concern. Despite the challenges, there are moments when cleanliness is celebrated. Festivals or religious holidays might prompt more thorough washing, clothing repair, and home cleaning. These occasions provide a temporary reprieve from the usual grime, and a chance to feel refreshed and renewed. You might remember the anticipation leading up to such events when the entire family participates in scrubbing and airing out the hut, washing garments, and preparing simple treats. These rituals reinforce social bonds and provide hope amid the hardships of daily life. Historians still debate how these hygiene practices influenced disease spread in medieval communities. While poor sanitation undoubtedly contributed to outbreaks of illnesses, some scholars emphasize the resilience of rural populations and the role of immunity developed through exposure. The complexity of factors, diet, environment, social structures, makes it difficult to draw firm conclusions. What remains clear is that hygiene, or the lack thereof, played a crucial role in shaping medieval health and quality of life. As you finally settle down, brushing off the day's dirt as best you can, and sharing warmth with your family, you carry with you the knowledge that hygiene is as much a battle of endurance and adaptation as the cold or pests. In this intimate shared space, cleanliness is negotiated daily through small acts of care, tradition, and superstition. You breathe deeply, surrounded by the smells and textures of your life, ready to face the night and whatever dreams or discomfort it may bring. Before you close your eyes for the night, your mind wanders to the rituals and superstitions woven tightly into the fabric of peasant life, those whispered beliefs that offer a fragile shield against the unseen terrors lurking in the dark. Nighttime is not simply a physical experience of cold and fatigue, but a psychological battleground where fears of evil spirits, witches, and nightmares shape your behavior and rest. You may have been told stories since childhood about the necessity of certain protective charms, prayers, or small acts performed before lying down, practices passed down orally, and believed to safeguard body and soul from harm during vulnerable hours. These rituals are part comfort, part control, in a world where much remains mysterious and threatening. One such practice is the careful placement of objects around your sleeping area. Sprigs of herbs like rosemary, sage, or rue hung near the bed, or woven into garlands worn during the night. These plants were thought to have protective qualities, warding off evil spirits and bad dreams. You may recall your mother or grandmother instructing you to tuck a small bundle under your pillow, or to sprinkle a handful of salt around the threshold of the hut. Salt, in particular, was prized as a purifying agent believed to create invisible barriers against malevolent forces. These acts, simple yet deeply symbolic, offer a psychological sense of safety that modern logic might dismiss, but which was profoundly real to you. Prayers are another pillar of nighttime defense. The medieval peasant's world is suffused with religion, and before sleep, it was common to whisper short invocations, recite psalms, or make the sign of the cross. These spiritual acts are not mere habit, but a conscious appeal for protection from harm and for peaceful rest. The belief in angel saints and divine guardians provides comfort amid the darkness, and you might find yourself repeating familiar phrases in the quiet moments before sleep, a lullaby for both body and spirit. Sometimes prayers are directed toward specific concerns, health, safety from thieves or wild animals, or the blessing of family members. This intertwining of faith and daily life gives the night a sacred dimension. Historians still debate the extent to which such superstitions and religious practices influence mental health and sleep quality among peasants. Some argue that these rituals help reduce anxiety and provided coping mechanisms, while others suggest that fear of spirits and the unknown could exacerbate stress and nightmares. What is clear is that these beliefs shaped how medieval peasants experienced and interpreted the nighttime world, blending the physical and metaphysical in ways that are unfamiliar to us but integral to their reality. Nightmares themselves held particular significance. Bad dreams were often seen not just as random or psychological phenomena, but as warnings or manifestations of spiritual attack. You might have been told that nightmares are the work of demons or witches trying to steal your soul or bring misfortune. To combat this, various remedies were employed: sleeping with a knife under the pillow, sprinkling holy water around the bed, or wearing amulets blessed by priests. These practices aim to create a protective aura, turning your sleeping space into a fortress against the dark forces believed to roam at night. The fear of witchcraft was pervasive and could dictate many of your nighttime habits. Stories of witches cursing villagers, sending sickness, or causing bad harvests were common, and suspicion could fall on neighbors or even family members. The idea that witches might visit during the night added a layer of anxiety that no amount of physical comfort could dispel. This fear could isolate individuals and create social tensions, but it also underscored the importance of community and shared belief systems in maintaining order and safety. You may also recall the practice of soul sleep, the belief that the soul left the body during sleep and could be vulnerable to harm. This idea encouraged certain behaviors before bed, such as reciting prayers or ensuring that doors and windows were securely fastened to prevent evil spirits from entering. The boundaries between waking and sleeping, life and death, were porous and uncertain, making the night a liminal space fraught with both danger and possibility. These beliefs influenced your perception of sleep itself, not just as rest, but as a journey requiring vigilance. Superstitions extended to the behavior and position of sleepers. For example, it was thought unlucky or dangerous to sleep with your head pointing toward a doorway or window, as this could invite spirits or death. Some believed that sleeping with your feet facing the door was an invitation to the Grim Reaper. You might have heard elders caution against falling asleep with your shoes on or under the bed, practices seen as tempting fate. These rules, though sometimes contradictory or confusing, governed how you arranged your sleeping space, intertwining physical reality with spiritual symbolism. Beyond personal rituals, communal practices also influenced nighttime security and peace of mind. Some villages maintained night watchmen or guards who patrolled the streets, calling out warnings or prayers to keep evil at bay. The sounds of bells or horns might signal the approach of danger or serve to remind villagers to pray. These collective actions fostered a sense of shared responsibility and protection, though they could not guarantee safety from the unpredictable threats of nature or human malice. Despite the fears and rituals, nighttime was also a time of quiet hope and reflection. The dark hours allowed for contemplation of life's mysteries, for whispered prayers of gratitude or yearning. You might find solace in the belief that the dawn would bring renewal, that the trials of night were temporary, and that divine grace watched over you. This blend of fear and faith created a rich emotional tapestry that shaped your experience of sleep and waking. Sometimes humor and skepticism tempered these beliefs. Villagers might share stories poking fun at superstitions or recounting clever tricks to outwit evil spirits. These narratives served as social glue, offering relief from anxiety and reinforcing cultural bonds. The night then was not only a domain of fear, but also of storytelling and connection. Historians continued to explore how these nighttime beliefs influenced broader medieval culture, from literature and art to legal practices and social norms. The intersection of sleep spirituality and superstition reveals a complex world where the physical and metaphysical coexisted inseparably. Understanding these dimensions enriches our appreciation of medieval peasant life, beyond the mere hardships of poverty and labor. As you finally settle into your straw bed, surrounded by the faint aroma of herbs and the lingering smoke of the hearth you carry with you, these layers of belief and ritual, the night holds both tangible dangers and invisible ones. But through these protective acts, prayers, charms, and customs, you find a measure of peace. Sleep, fragile and precious, becomes a guarded sanctuary where body, mind, and soul briefly find rest before the world's challenges resume with dawn. You lie awake, stomach grumbling softly, your body aching with hunger that refuses to be silenced by the darkness. The last meal of the day, often modest and hurried, still lingers in your thoughts as you settle into the uneasy transition from wakefulness to sleep. In the medieval peasant's world, food is never taken for granted, and the night is a time when the pangs of hunger become most acute and impossible to ignore. The simple porridge or coarse bread consumed hours ago may offer little sustenance against the cold or the relentless demands of your laboring body. Hunger gnaws quietly but persistently, tugging at your concentration and weaving itself into your dreams and discomforts. Dinner was likely a humble affair, a bowl of pottage thick and soupy made from vegetables and whatever scraps of meat or grains you could afford. Meat was rare and often reserved for feast days or special occasions, so most meals relied heavily on root vegetables, legumes, and bread baked in the communal oven. You recall the smell of simmering vegetables and the sound of your family eating in near silence, each bite a small victory against the day's exhaustion. Yet as night deepens, the memory of food also brings awareness of scarcity, a reminder that tomorrow's meal is uncertain, and that survival depends on careful rationing and hope. Hunger is more than a physical sensation. It infiltrates your psyche and shapes your dreams. You may find yourself wandering through visions of abundant fields or overflowing tables, images of plenty starkly contrasting with your reality. Sometimes hunger twists into nightmares, visions of famine, starvation, or the loss of loved ones. These dreams are not simply figments of imagination, but reflections of the constant anxiety that permeates peasant life. The mind processes the day's fears and frustrations through sleep, weaving hunger into symbolic narratives that linger upon waking. Historians still debate how the medieval peasant diet affected sleep quality and overall health. Some suggest that irregular meals and nutritional deficiencies contributed to restless nights and chronic fatigue. Others highlight the resilience of rural populations accustomed to cycles of scarcity and abundance. The quality and quantity of food directly impacted energy levels, immune function, and the ability to endure physical labor, all factors intricately tied to the rhythms of sleep and wakefulness. Your family's eating habits also influence social dynamics and nighttime routines. Meals are often communal, reinforcing bonds through shared consumption and conversation, but they are also tightly regulated to stretch limited resources. Children might be given priority, or elders might eat last, reflecting cultural values and survival strategies. You recall the subtle negotiations at the table, the careful division of food, the unspoken sacrifices, and the gratitude expressed through silence or simple words. These practices echo into the night, shaping the emotional atmosphere as you settle down. Sometimes the physical act of eating late or in large quantities is avoided based on beliefs that heavy meals before bed disrupt sleep or invite illness. You might have heard elders caution against overeating at night, advising light suppers or fasting as a path to restful slumber. These ideas blend observation with tradition, influencing how you and your family approach evening meals. The balance between satisfying hunger and preserving health is delicate, especially in an environment where food is precious and often insufficient. The preparation of food also leaves its mark on the hut's nighttime environment. The lingering aroma of cooked grains, smoky meat, or herbs mingles with the smells of smoke and earth, creating a sensory backdrop that comforts or aggravates. Sometimes you can hear the clatter of pots being cleaned, or the scrape of wooden utensils as the day's labor draws to a close. These sounds signal transition, a movement from the hard work of daylight to the relative rest of night. Yet even in these moments, the demands of survival are evident, as leftover food is stored carefully to prevent spoilage or theft. You may also be aware of the influence of fasting and feast days on nighttime experiences. Religious observances such as Lent or Advent imposed dietary restrictions that altered your family's routines and nutritional intake. These periods of scarcity could intensify hunger and shape dreams, while feast days brought rare abundance and celebration, filling the hut with warmth, light, and laughter. The cyclical nature of medieval life is reflected in these rhythms of deprivation, and plenty framing your experience of night and day. The psychological impact of hunger cannot be underestimated. Persistent hunger creates stress hormones that interfere with sleep quality, leading to fragmentation and restlessness. You may find yourself waking frequently, your mind preoccupied with thoughts of food security and survival. These mental patterns are universal, yet in the medieval context they take on acute significance due to the precariousness of your existence. Hunger is not only a bodily sensation, but a reminder of vulnerability, scarcity, and hope. You also learn to interpret bodily signals, growling stomachs, low energy, or dizziness, as guides for your activity and rest. When hunger is severe, sleep might evade you altogether, replaced by wakefulness filled with anxiety or planning. Conversely, exhaustion from labor might temporarily dull these sensations, allowing brief reprieves in slumber. This complex interplay shapes your nightly experience, making sleep a fluctuating state, influenced by both internal and external factors. Communal support and sharing play a role in mitigating hunger's impact. Villagers may barter, lend, or share food during hard times, providing social safety nets that ease the burden. You remember neighbors dropping off a basket of bread or a few eggs, small gestures that ripple through the night's consciousness, offering comfort and solidarity. These acts of kindness are as vital as any physical sustenance, nourishing the spirit and reinforcing communal bonds. Historians still explore how medieval peasant diets and food insecurity influence broader social structures and cultural practices. Famine and scarcity drove migrations, conflicts, and adaptations, shaping history in profound ways. The intimate experience of hunger during nighttime rest offers a window into these larger forces, grounding abstract events in the tangible realities of body and mind. As you finally surrender to sleep, the echoes of hunger fade but do not disappear. Dreams carry traces of appetite and longing, intertwining with hopes for a better tomorrow. Your body rests briefly, gathering strength amid uncertainty. The night, shaped by the quiet chorus of physical need and emotional resilience, becomes a crucible where survival is tested and renewed. Outside your humble hut, the village settles into a rhythm of nighttime noises that blend into a soundtrack of both comfort and caution. As darkness deepens, the occasional bark of a village dog echoes across the dirt streets, a sentinel's cry guarding the fragile peace. You may hear the low murmur of a distant quarrel, or the laughter of a few late-night revelers, their voices carrying faintly on the cool air before fading into silence. These sounds are part of your world, reminders that life continues beyond your walls, mingling with the natural chorus of wind, rustling through trees, the chirping of crickets, and the occasional hoot of an owl. Night is alive, a tapestry woven from the mundane and the mysterious, grounding you, even as it invites unease. You recognize the occasional dangers embedded in this nocturnal soundscape. Wolves are a real threat in many rural areas, their chilling howls piercing the night and striking fear into the hearts of villagers. These predators lurk at the edges of your world, reminders that the boundary between safety and peril is thin. The possibility of thieves or bandits prowling the village adds another layer of anxiety, as do stories of strangers with ill intent passing through under the cover of darkness. These threats shape the village's nightly habits, from locked doors and guarded livestock to communal watches and prayers. The night, though peaceful on the surface, is charged with the tension of unseen dangers. Historians still debate how pervasive and effective such village defenses were. Some argue that close-knit communities and shared vigilance provided strong protection, while others point to frequent incidents of theft, violence, and wild animal attacks as evidence of persistent vulnerability. Regardless, these sounds and the responses they provoke form a vital part of your experience, influencing how you perceive the night and your place within it. Animals play a crucial role in the village's nocturnal life. Livestock, such as pigs, goats, and chickens, often share space close to or even inside huts. Their movements and noises a constant presence. Their grunts, bleats, and clucks mingle with human sounds, adding texture to the night's chorus. These animals provide warmth and protection, their body heat, helping stave off the cold, but they also bring odors, pests, and the occasional chaos as they move or are startled. You may find the gentle breathing of a sow or the restless scratching of chickens comforting, a sign of life and continuity in a challenging environment. The presence of animals inside or near the hut also demands practical vigilance. You might hear the soft padding of rats or mice whose nighttime scavenging threatens food stores and hygiene. Cats, when present, prowl silently, hunting these pests and adding their own distinctive sounds to the village's nighttime soundtrack. Their yowls or purring create an additional layer of interaction between human and animal life after dark. This mingling of species blurs the boundaries between domesticity and wilderness, reflecting a world where survival depends on complex coexistence. Village rituals and social norms shape the nighttime soundscape as well. The tolling of church bells marks canonical hours, signaling times for prayer and reflection even in the quiet of night. These bells serve as temporal anchors, punctuating darkness with familiar sounds that connect villagers to faith and community. You might recall the comforting regularity of these chimes, their echo carrying over rooftops and fields, weaving a spiritual thread through the night. Sometimes festivals or special occasions bring music and laughter into the night. Faint strains of lute or flute might drift from a distant gathering, accompanied by singing and dancing that push back the shadows and offer moments of joy. These rare events are cherished respites from the daily hardships, and their sounds infuse the night with warmth and celebration. The contrast between the usual quiet vigilance and these bursts of communal life highlights the cyclical nature of medieval village existence. You might also notice the rhythms of nature reflected in the night sounds, the steady drip of water from thatched roofs, the fluttering of bats emerging for their nocturnal hunts, or the distant rumble of thunder signaling an approaching storm. These natural cues influence your awareness and readiness, blending the human and environmental elements of nighttime life. The weather's unpredictable moods remind you that the forces beyond your control shape your survival as much as human actions do. The architecture of the village affects how sounds travel and are perceived. Dirt roads, wooden fences, and clustered huts create echoes and muffled passages that can both conceal and reveal movement. You may find yourself alert to the faintest footsteps or the shift of a shadow, interpreting these signals through experience and instinct. This heightened auditory awareness is a survival skill sharpened over years of living closely with danger and uncertainty. Superstitions and beliefs infuse your interpretation of nighttime sounds. An owl's hoot might be seen as an omen of death or misfortune, while the barking of dogs could be a sign of evil spirits or impending danger. Stories of ghosts or fairies wandering after dark add a layer of mysticism that colors your perceptions, blending fear and fascination. These narratives are shared around fires and in hushed tones, shaping how you and your neighbors engage with the mysterious aspects of the night. Despite the potential for fear, the village's nighttime sounds also provide comfort. The familiar noises of life-breathing neighbors, shifting animals' distant chatter, reassure you that you are part of a living community. This sense of connection helps soothe anxieties and fosters resilience. The night is not a void, but a shared space where human and natural worlds intertwine, offering both challenge and solace. Historians continue to explore how medieval rural communities balance these tensions, developing social practices, architectural solutions, and cultural narratives to negotiate the night's complexities. Understanding this dynamic enriches our view of peasant life, revealing it as vibrant and adaptive rather than merely bleak. As you lie in your straw bed, ears attuned to the village's nocturnal chorus, you feel both small and connected. The night's sounds envelop you, grounding you in place and time, a living symphony of survival and community that carries you towards sleep and the dawn's promise. The low warmth of the hut mingles with an unexpected source of heat and life for your livestock. It's not unusual for animals to share your living space, especially during the biting cold months when every bit of body heat counts. Chickens roost on wooden perches just above your head, their soft clucks and gentle fluttering, adding a subtle soundtrack to your restless nights. Goats or pigs may be penned just inside the doorway or in a corner of the room, their breath visible in the cold air mixing with yours. This proximity blurs the lines between human and animal habitats, creating a shared ecosystem that offers both comfort and risk. The animals provide vital warmth, but they also bring odors, noise, and pests, turning your humble hut into a bustling microcosm of rural life. The benefits of having livestock close at hand are undeniable. Their body heat helps keep the chill at bay, a crucial factor when blankets are thin or absent, and the wattle and daub walls offer little insulation. In freezing weather, you might find the warmth radiating from a sleeping sow or the gentle nudge of a goat comforting. Their presence reassures you that food is nearby, eggs laid at dawn, milk fresh from the udder, or the promise of meat in harder times. This closeness fosters a bond. The animals are not just property, but companions in survival. Their well-being is intertwined with yours, a shared fate in the daily struggle against the elements and scarcity. However, this close quarters coexistence carries its own challenges. The odors of animals, earthy, pungent, and sometimes overwhelming, permeate the air. The mingling smells of manure, fur, feathers, and sweat create a potent atmosphere that modern noses might find unbearable, but which you have learned to accept, even find comforting as a sign of life and sustenance. The animal's movements, scratching, shifting, and occasional grunts can interrupt sleep, especially when startled or hungry. Their presence also invites pests, fleas, lice, and rodents that thrive in warm, crowded conditions. You may wake to find tiny creatures crawling over bedding, or hear the soft scurrying of mice among the straw. Historians still debate how the presence of animals inside living spaces influenced peasant health. Some argue that close contact increased the spread of zoonotic diseases, parasites, and respiratory ailments due to ammonia buildup from waste. Others highlight the practical benefits, emphasizing that the warmth and security provided by livestock outweighed the health risks in an environment where alternatives were scarce. This tension underscores the complex calculus of medieval peasant life, where every choice involved trade-offs between comfort, safety, and survival. Your family's routine includes tending to these animals before nightfall, ensuring they have food and water, and are safely penned to prevent escape or predator attacks. This care is as much a part of your daily labor as working the fields. At night, you may hear the soft grunts of contented animals, or the occasional distressed call if a predator lurks nearby. These sounds become part of the nocturnal landscape, reminding you that your survival is shared with these creatures. Their vulnerability and dependence on you strengthen the emotional bonds, reinforcing your role as caretaker and protector. Animals also influence social relations within the village. Livestock are valuable assets, and their health and productivity affect family status and economic stability. Sharing knowledge about animal husbandry, diseases, and breeding is a vital part of communal life. You may have exchanged advice with neighbors about how to keep goats healthy through winter, or how to prevent chickens from wandering into the woods. This exchange fosters a sense of community and mutual support, essential in a precarious environment. The presence of animals indoors also shapes your spatial awareness. You learn to navigate the cramped hut carefully to avoid stepping on fragile eggs or startling a resting pig. Animals' routines and habits influence your own movements and sleep patterns. For example, chickens might awaken at dawn's first light, their clucking signaling the start of the day and rousing the household. Their activity can interrupt your sleep, but it also provides a natural alarm clock syncing human and animal rhythms. Some folklore surrounds the relationship between peasants and their animals, adding layers of meaning to everyday interactions. For instance, it was believed that animals could sense impending danger or death, their behavior serving as omens. Sudden restlessness or silence among livestock might prompt prayers or rituals to avert misfortune. You might recall stories told around the fire about animals behaving strangely before storms or village crises. These beliefs reflect the intertwined spiritual and practical aspects of rural life, where animals are seen as both companions and messengers. The physical presence of animals also affects the cleanliness and maintenance of the hut. Waste disposal is a constant challenge, and manure often accumulates near the animal pens or is removed carefully to prevent fouling living areas. The proximity of waste increases the risk of disease, but also provides fertilizer for crops, linking your domestic space directly to agricultural productivity. Managing this balance is a daily concern, requiring vigilance and labor. You might sometimes find humor or affection in the quirks of your animals, the stubborn goat refusing to be penned, the chicken's noisy antics, or the pig's muddy contentment. These moments lighten the weight of hardship, offering companionship and joy. Animals become part of your family's emotional landscape, their presence softening the edges of a hard life. Historians continue to explore how the domestic integration of animals shaped medieval peasant culture, economy, and health. This relationship reveals the complexity of rural life, where survival depended on intimate knowledge of and connection to the natural world. Understanding this shared space enriches our appreciation of the resilience and adaptability of medieval peasants. As you nestle closer to the animal's warmth, the noises and scents blending around you, you feel the fragile security of this shared shelter. The boundaries between human and animal blur in the cold night, creating a community of living beings united by hardship and hope. Your rest, though interrupted and imperfect, is sustained by this closeness, a testament to the intertwined destinies of people and beasts in the medieval world. As the seasons change, so too does the rhythm of your sleep, shaped intimately by the ebb and flow of daylight and labor. In the long, bright days of summer, the sun rises early and lingers late, casting golden light across the village well before your household stirs. your body attuned to nature's cycles rather than the ticking of clocks responds accordingly. Sleep is broken into shorter segments with the heat and extended daylight, encouraging earlier waking and later settling down. The warmth seeps through the hut's thin walls, sometimes making the air heavy and difficult to breathe at night. You may find yourself tossing and turning on your straw bed, seeking cooler spots or relief in the shade outside. Summer nights, though warmer, bring their own challenges. The chorus of insects buzzing relentlessly, the distant barking of animals, and the occasional storm's thunder rattling the thatch. In contrast, winter's grip tightens the boundaries of your day and night. The sun rises late and retreats early, plunging the village into long cold nights where darkness dominates. Your sleep stretches longer, a refuge from the biting cold and the arduous toil that awaits. However, the harsh weather and shorter days also mean less opportunity for food gathering and preparation, intensifying worries, and often resulting in restless nights. The dampness and chill infiltrate the hut, making even sleep uncomfortable. You learn to conserve energy, embracing the longer darkness as a chance for recovery, despite its discomforts. The deep winter sleep becomes a survival strategy, a way to endure lean times with body and mind rested as much as possible. Historians still explore how medieval peasants adapted their sleep patterns to seasonal variations. Some studies suggest a biphasic or segmented sleep, where people slept in two distinct periods separated by an hour or more of wakefulness, often used for prayer, reflection, or household tasks. Others propose a more continuous sleep, adapted to the natural light cycle. Regardless, the seasonality of sleep is clear, reflecting a deep connection to the environment often lost in modern artificial lighting and structured schedules. Your family's daily routines shift accordingly. In summer, work in the fields begins early, sometimes before dawn, and extends late into the evening, constrained only by the sun's presence. Meals are lighter and more frequent, relying on fresh produce and preserved foods from previous seasons. Nights are shorter and often filled with socializing or community activities. You might hear laughter from neighbors or the soft strumming of a lute, moments of joy amid the relentless work. Winter demands a different pace. Tasks focus on maintenance, repairing tools, and caring for animals indoors. Food is scarcer, and often preserved dried grains, salted meats, and root vegetables stored carefully to last through the cold months. Meals are heartier but less varied, designed to sustain through lean times. The long nights encourage inward-focused storytelling and religious observances. You may find your family gathered around the hearth, more often sharing warmth and companionship to combat the isolation. The changing seasons also influence your clothing and bedding. Thicker layers and heavier woolens are brought out in winter, while lighter garments suffice for summer. Blankets and straw mattresses are supplemented or layered differently to provide insulation against the cold. You become adept at adjusting these physical comforts according to the time of year, a practice passed down through observation and necessity. Environmental cues govern much of your experience, from the first light breaking through the hut's window to the chill in the morning air. You notice subtle changes, the lengthening shadows signaling autumn's approach, the birds' altered songs, and the shifting position of the sun. These natural markers help regulate your sleep and activity, embedding you in a cycle that connects you to the land and community. The villager's calendar is also marked by seasonal festivals and religious observances that punctuate the year and influence daily life. Harvest celebrations, solstice rituals, and saints' days bring moments of respite and collective joy. These events often involve communal meals, dancing, and prayer, providing emotional nourishment and strengthening social bonds. Anticipation of these occasions colors your nights, offering hope and distraction during difficult seasons. Seasonal illnesses further complicate sleep and health. Cold and damp winters bring respiratory ailments, while summer's heat and humidity can exacerbate pest infestations and infections. You learn to recognize symptoms and employ herbal remedies, but the limits of medieval medicine mean that many suffer through illness. These physical challenges disrupt sleep and add to the burdens of daily survival. Historians debate how well medieval peasants coped with these seasonal stresses, noting variations based on geography, climate, and social status. Some communities developed sophisticated agricultural and social strategies to mitigate risks, while others struggled under harsher conditions. The adaptability and resilience displayed reflect a profound knowledge of and respect for nature's rhythms. Your sleep, shaped by these cycles, becomes both a physical necessity and a cultural practice intertwined with the season's changing demands. You rest not only to recover, but to prepare for the work and challenges that each new day and season will bring. This seasonal dance of light labor and rest forms the heartbeat of your existence. As the year turns, you carry these rhythms within you, a living connection to the earth and your ancestors. The pattern of sleep and wakefulness, of warmth and cold, of plenty and scarcity, is a story written in your body and spirit, a testament to human endurance in harmony with nature's enduring cycles. You stand at the edge of the day's end, contemplating the worn and tattered garments that will serve as your nighttime attire. Sleep clothes, as we might call them, are not a distinct category in your medieval peasant world, but rather the very clothes you've worn through the day. Rough spun linen shirts, patched woolen tunics, and coarse hose that double as blankets and insulation against the night's chill. The concept of a separate set of pajamas or nightgown is foreign. Instead, the same clothing layers that shield you from sun and wind become your armor for sleep. This practical overlap reflects the scarcity and thrift inherent in peasant life, where every scrap of fabric is precious and nothing is wasted. You carefully peel off outer layers if the fire's warmth permits, leaving only a minimal covering that balances comfort with heat conservation. The itchy wool against your skin is familiar and less distracting than the cold creeping through the hut's cracks. You tuck your legs into thick socks or wrap strips of cloth around your feet, a practice learned from elders who insist that cold feet at night invite illness or bad dreams. The garments are often stiff from repeated washing or patching, carrying the faint smells of smoke, sweat, and earth. Despite these discomforts, you find a strange solace in the weight and texture of your clothes, an intimate connection to your labor and survival. Historians still explore how medieval peasants balanced clothing for warmth, utility, and modesty in the context of sleep. In colder regions, additional layers or even animal skins might supplement wool and linen. Some records suggest that peasants occasionally fashioned simple nightcaps or hoods to retain heat, though these were more common among wealthier classes. The practicality of clothing dictated most decisions, with comfort often secondary to necessity. The limited wardrobe necessitates careful maintenance. You mend tiers with coarse thread patch, worn spots, and sometimes repurpose older garments into bedding or cloths. The family's clothing forms a rotating inventory passed down or shared according to age, size, and need. You've learned to sew, or at least knot thread, to prolong the life of your clothes, a skill essential for survival. The ritual of repairing garments before bed might be a quiet moment of reflection or a communal activity reinforcing bonds and traditions. Nighttime dress also reflects social status and weather conditions. The poorest peasants wear simple functional garments that offer minimal protection against the cold. More prosperous villagers might possess finer wool, or even homespun silk, though these are rare. Your clothing signals your place in the social fabric, influencing how you see yourself and are perceived by others. Despite this, the shared hardship of nighttime chill and the sameness of sleep clothes create a common experience that transcends social divisions. There are also superstitions tied to clothing and sleep. It was believed that sleeping with your shoes on could lead to death or misfortune, a warning passed down through generations. You might have been cautioned against going to bed with wet or dirty clothes, as these could invite illness or bad dreams. Such beliefs influenced your habits and reinforced the importance of careful clothing management. You learn to prioritize clean and dry garments for sleep whenever possible, though scarcity often limits your options. The physical discomfort of your sleep attire is undeniable. Rough fabrics chafe against skin seams, press into sensitive areas, and weight restricts movement. You adjust your position frequently, seeking relief while conserving warmth. The constant itch of wool and the scratch of coarse thread become a nightly test of endurance. Yet these sensations are familiar and strangely grounding, connecting you to the rhythms of rural life and the cycle of seasons. You may sometimes dream of softer fabrics and warmer clothes, fantasies sparked by tales from travelers, or glimpses of noble attire. These dreams contrast sharply with your reality, highlighting the stark inequalities of medieval society. Yet you accept your garments with a stoic pride, recognizing them as tools of survival and symbols of your identity and resilience. Care for clothing extends beyond the individual to the household. Washing is infrequent and often communal, with family members assisting each other in cleaning and repairing garments. The process involves laborious scrubbing in cold water, drying in the sun, and careful storage to prevent damage. You might recall the scent of soapwort or other natural detergents used in these rituals, subtle but effective in their time. These shared activities strengthen familial bonds and transmit cultural knowledge. Your clothing also serves multifunctional roles. By day, it protects against sun, wind, and injury. By night, it insulates and offers modesty. In emergencies, your garments might be layered for added warmth, or repurposed as bandages or carrying cloths. This versatility underscores the ingenuity and adaptability required in peasant life, where resources are scarce and creativity is essential. Historians continued to study medieval textile production, clothing use, and cultural meanings, uncovering the complex social and economic dimensions embedded in everyday attire. Clothing choices reflect identity status, gender roles, and survival strategies, illuminating facets of peasant life, often overshadowed by broader historical narratives. As you settle into your rough-spun tunic and woolen hose, you prepare for the night's rest with an acceptance forged by necessity and experience. The weight and texture of your clothing are both burden and comfort, a tangible link to the earth you cultivate and the community you belong to. In these garments, you find a measure of protection and continuity, ready to face the night's cold embrace and the promise of dawn's renewal. When sleep stubbornly eludes you, as it often does beneath the cold, smoky rafters of your peasant hut, you turn to remedies that are as much a part of your heritage as the earth beneath your feet. Medieval insomnia, as you might call it, is a vexing foe fueled by hunger, worry, cold, and the endless disruptions of pests and noise. The herbs and potions of your ancestors offer a fragile hope, whispered remedies passed down through generations, blending practical knowledge with the mysticism that colors every aspect of life. These ancient cures, simple yet potent, become companions in the dark, promising relief even as their efficacy remains a mystery. One common remedy involves the use of calming herbs such as valerian chamomile or lavender, gathered from nearby fields and gardens. You might steep dried flowers in hot water to create a fragrant infusion, sipping it slowly as the fire's glow dims. The scent itself seems to coax your body toward relaxation. The warmth of the tea, a balm against the chill. Sometimes you tuck sachets filled with these herbs beneath your pillow, or hang bundles near your bed, believing their aroma will lull you into peaceful sleep and ward off nightmares. The act of preparation and ritual imbues these remedies with meaning beyond their physical effects, creating a sense of control amid the unpredictable night. Other peasants swear by the use of dream pillows, small cloth bags filled with aromatic plants like hops or rose petals. You may have heard stories of these pillows carrying the power to induce restful sleep or pleasant dreams, their fragrance weaving through the night's darkness like a gentle lullaby. Such beliefs highlight the medieval imagination's intricate weaving of sensory experience and spiritual hope, turning simple flora into talismans of peace. Whether these pillows truly ease insomnia or simply comfort the mind is a question left to history's scholars. Historians still debate the extent to which herbal remedies were used and their effectiveness. Some suggest that peasants had a surprisingly sophisticated knowledge of local plants and their medicinal properties, while others argue that superstition often overshadowed practical use. Regardless, these remedies reflect a culture deeply attuned to its environment and dependent on natural resources for health and well-being. The boundary between medicine and magic was porous, and healing was as much about belief as about biology. You might also employ simple physical techniques to ease sleeplessness. Breathing exercises or gentle stretches learned through observation or advice help relax tense muscles and calm the mind. Some families incorporate mild massage or the application of warm cloths to aching limbs, soothing the weariness that haunts your body after long days of labor. These practices, though rudimentary, offer respite and reinforce familial care and connection. Prayer and spiritual contemplation often accompany these remedies. You may find yourself repeating familiar prayers or invoking saints, associated with health and protection, seeking divine intervention against the restlessness. The medieval worldview deeply entwines the spiritual and the physical, and insomnia is no exception. Night is a time when the soul is vulnerable, and seeking celestial aid is both natural and necessary. These acts provide psychological comfort, fostering hope and resilience, even when relief is uncertain. Occasionally, you might encounter more esoteric remedies, chants, amulets, or rituals performed by local wise women or healers. These figures blend herbal knowledge with spiritual authority, offering guidance and treatments that address both body and spirit. Their presence in the village is a testament to the communal nature of healing and the trust placed in tradition and experience. You might recall stories of such healers calming restless sleepers or protecting households from nocturnal evils. The communal sharing of remedies and experiences strengthens social bonds. Villagers exchange knowledge about effective treatments or caution against harmful practices, creating a network of support. This oral tradition preserves cultural memory, and fosters a sense of belonging, reinforcing the village as a living repository of wisdom and care. You might find comfort in these shared stories, knowing that your struggles with sleep are part of a collective human experience. Despite these efforts, insomnia often persists, fueled by the harsh realities of peasant life, poverty, labor, hunger, and fear. The mind, burdened by worries of the morrow and haunted by shadows, resists rest. You learn to accept this resistance, to ride the waves of wakefulness until exhaustion claims you again. This endurance becomes a form of resilience, a testament to the strength of the human spirit in adversity. Historians continue to explore how medieval sleep disturbances influenced daily life, health, and culture. The interplay of physical, psychological, and spiritual factors creates a complex picture of rest and unrest. Understanding these dynamics enriches our appreciation of peasant life, revealing depths of experience often overlooked in broader historical narratives. As you finally close your eyes, wrapped in the faint fragrance of herbs, in the quiet hope of prayer, you surrender to the night's uncertain embrace. The remedies, rituals, and shared traditions offer a fragile sanctuary, a space where body, mind, and spirit seek rest amidst the enduring trials of medieval life. Sleep may come fitfully, but it comes carrying the promise of renewal and the strength to face another day. As darkness envelops your humble hut, the weight of religion presses gently yet persistently upon your thoughts, weaving itself into the fabric of your nightly rest. In a world where uncertainty shadows every moment and danger lurks unseen, prayer and vigil become essential tools not only for spiritual salvation, but for practical comfort. You may find your hands folding instinctively, lips murmuring familiar words from the Psalms or the Lord's Prayer, the rhythmic cadence a balm to frayed nerves and restless minds. These acts are far from mere habit. They are lifelines cast into the void, gestures of faith that stitch you to a larger divine order amid the chaos of peasant life. Prayer before sleep is often a communal affair, with families gathering around the hearth, voices blending in whispered hymns or individual supplications. The warmth of shared belief enfolds you, creating a sacred space within the otherwise stark walls. You might remember the soft flicker of candlelight casting elongated shadows as your elders lead these devotions, instilling a sense of continuity and hope. These moments frame the night as a time of protection and grace, a boundary against evil spirits and misfortune. The intertwining of physical closeness and spiritual solidarity reinforces the bonds that sustain you through hardship. Vigils, especially on holy nights or in times of crisis, add another layer to your nighttime rituals. Staying awake to pray, to keep watch, or to observe religious feasts becomes a collective responsibility. These acts serve multiple purposes, honoring the divine, warding off darkness, both literal and figurative, and fostering community cohesion. The shared wakefulness breaks the monotony of hardship, transforming the night into a time of spiritual engagement and mutual support. You might recall the solemnity of Christmas Eve or Easter vigils, where the village gathers to mark sacred cycles with songs, readings, and candlelight, the chill and fatigue momentarily eclipsed by reverence. Historians still explore how religious practices influenced health and well-being among medieval peasants. Some suggest that prayer and ritual provided psychological relief from stress and anxiety, promoting mental resilience. Others note the social benefits of shared worship in reinforcing communal identity and mutual aid. The spiritual dimension of nighttime, far from being merely symbolic, played an active role in shaping experiences of rest, fear, and hope. The presence of religious symbols in your hut serves as a constant reminder of divine protection. Simple crosses hung near the door, holy water sprinkled in corners, or relics passed down through generations create an environment steeped in faith. These objects function as both spiritual safeguards and sources of comfort, tangible links to the sacred amid earthly struggles. You may trace your fingers over a worn crucifix before sleep, feeling the weight of prayers and blessings embedded in its wood or metal. Superstitions and folk beliefs often merge with formal religion, creating a rich tapestry of practices aimed at securing safety and peace during the vulnerable hours of night. You might have heard stories of saints intervening against nightmares or demons, or of prayers that could turn away evil spirits. These narratives, shared in whispered tones, serve to both educate and reassure, embedding spiritual lessons within daily life. The boundary between orthodoxy and folklore is fluid, reflecting a lived faith that is adaptive and deeply personal. The Church's influence extends beyond personal devotion to communal regulations governing nighttime behavior. Church bells mark canonical hours, structuring the day and night into sacred rhythms. Curfews or prohibitions against certain activities after dark enforce moral order and safety. These temporal markers shape your perception of time and provide a framework within which your daily and nightly activities unfold. The ringing of bells at dusk or dawn punctuates your world, signaling transitions between work and rest, secular and sacred. Pilgrimages, festivals, and holy days punctuate the yearly cycle, bringing communal respite and spiritual renewal. These events often involve nighttime vigils, feasting, and dancing moments when the village comes alive with light and music. Such celebrations provide relief from monotony and hardship, reinforcing social bonds and faith. You may remember the excitement of preparing for such occasions, the anticipation coloring your nights with hope and joy. Religious instruction and storytelling around the hearth reinforce the moral and spiritual education of children and adults alike. Parables, saints' lives, and biblical tales are recounted, their lessons woven into the fabric of nightly life. These stories offer models of virtue, endurance, and divine justice, shaping your understanding of suffering and hope. The oral tradition preserves cultural memory and sustains faith across generations. At times you might wrestle with doubt or fear, questioning divine intentions amid suffering. Night can be a time of spiritual struggle when prayers go unanswered and darkness feels overwhelming. Yet the persistence of faith, community support, and ritual practice provides a counterbalance, fostering resilience. You learn that belief is not static, but dynamic, tested, and reaffirmed through lived experience. Historians continue to investigate the interplay between religion and daily life in medieval peasant communities, revealing a nuanced portrait of faith as both personal and communal, practical and transcendent. Understanding this dimension enriches our view of peasant sleep and rest, highlighting the spiritual resources that sustained endurance. As you finally close your eyes, surrounded by the quiet presence of faith, family, and ritual, you find a measure of peace. The night, fraught with dangers seen and unseen, becomes a sacred space where body and soul seek refuge. In the embrace of prayer and vigil, you rest, gathering strength for the dawn and the continuing journey of life. The village church's bell tolls faintly in the distance as you lay still, your body heavy with exhaustion, yet your mind wrestling with the pressing debates that linger in whispered conversations among scholars and elders alike. Historians still argue vehemently over the true nature of peasant life, whether the relentless hardships of the medieval rural poor were primarily a crucible that forged resilience and community strength, or if they were an unyielding weight that crushed spirits and shortened lives. You find yourself caught between these perspectives, feeling the rawness of both truth and myth in your daily existence. The hut's cramped quarters, the constant struggle for warmth and food, the unending cycle of labor, these realities speak to deprivation. Yet the shared laughter by the fire, the whispered prayers, and the small kindnesses exchanged paint a picture of tenacity and hope. This debate isn't merely academic. It permeates the stories told by your parents and neighbors, shaping how you understand your place in the world. Some elders emphasize endurance as a form of quiet victory, their tales filled with examples of surviving famine, disease, and war. Others speak somberly of lost youth and broken bodies, cautioning against romanticizing a life of suffering. These narratives, passed orally from one generation to the next, influence your worldview and inform the ways you confront hardship. You carry both the weight of despair and the flame of determination, intertwined like the smoke and fire that warm your nights. You might recall moments when you questioned the purpose of such suffering, when the cold seemed unbearable, hunger relentless, and the nights endless. Yet, in those same moments, you also discovered unexpected joys: the smile of a sibling, the glow of a well-tended hearth, the solace of prayer. These contradictions define your experience and resonate with the ongoing scholarly debate: was peasant life a narrative of victimhood or agency? The answer is elusive, shaded by the complexity of human resilience and frailty. Material conditions within your hut reflect these tensions. The hard shared beds testify to scarcity, but also to closeness and mutual care. The presence of animals brings warmth, but also disease risks. The pervasive odors and pests symbolize hardship, but also the vibrancy of life. You navigate this terrain daily, embodying the dualities of medieval rural existence. Your physical environment is both crucible and sanctuary, testing your limits and nurturing your spirit. The seasonal rhythms further complicate the picture. Abundance in harvest time brings celebration and rest, a respite from toil and hunger. Scarcity during winter or drought sharpens the edge of hardship, forcing difficult choices and endurance. These cycles shape the narrative of your life, coloring the ongoing dialogue between suffering and survival. You learn to find meaning and purpose within these natural fluctuations, embracing the full spectrum of human experience. Social structures also influence this debate. The feudal system imposes obligations and limitations, often exacerbating peasant struggles through heavy taxation, labor duties, and limited rights. Yet communities develop systems of mutual aid, shared labor, and collective rituals that mitigate hardships. You witness and participate in these social dynamics, experiencing both oppression and solidarity. These interactions complicate any simplistic interpretation of peasant life as merely miserable or heroic. Historians analyze written records, archaeological findings, and oral traditions to reconstruct these realities, but gaps remain. The voices of peasants themselves are faint, filtered through the accounts of landlords, clergy, and travelers. This scarcity of direct testimony challenges scholars to piece together a nuanced understanding from fragments and inference. As someone living this life, you are a living testament to the complexity and resilience that history strives to capture. Health and longevity are central to the debate. Frequent illness, malnutrition, and harsh working conditions contribute to high mortality rates, especially among children and the elderly. Yet many individuals reach adulthood and beyond adapting to their environment and passing on knowledge that enhances survival. Your own family's stories of births, deaths, and recoveries echo this pattern, illustrating the fragile balance between vulnerability and strength. Economic factors intertwine with these themes. Peasants' access to land tools and resources shapes their ability to sustain themselves and their families. Market fluctuations, bad harvests, and external conflicts impose uncertainties that ripple through daily life. Despite these challenges, you find ways to adapt, whether through barter labor exchange or diversification of crops and animals. These strategies reflect ingenuity and agency amid structural constraints. Cultural expressions, songs, stories, festivals offer insight into peasant perspectives, revealing humor, sorrow, resistance, and hope. These creative outlets serve as both escape and affirmation, reinforcing community identity and continuity. You partake in these traditions, finding in them a language for your experiences and aspirations. This ongoing dialogue between deprivation and resilience shapes how you understand your place in history and humanity. It informs your sense of identity, pride, and possibility. You are both product and agent of this complex heritage, embodying the contradictions and capacities of the human spirit. As you drift toward sleep, the weight of these reflections mingles with the immediate sensations of your environment, the chill in the air, the flicker of firelight, the shared breaths of your family. The hut, with all its imperfections, is a crucible of life where history is made in the quiet endurance of night. Your dreams carry these layers of meaning, weaving past and present hardship and hope into the tapestry of your being. While your nights are spent in the modest hut, a world away in grand castles and manor houses, nobles enjoy an altogether different realm of sleep, one marked by comfort, luxury, and relative security. The beds of the wealthy are vast and ornate, draped with rich fabrics like velvet and silk, stuffed with feathers or wool, and often surrounded by heavy curtains to keep out drafts and prying eyes. These canopied beds are almost sanctuaries unto themselves, promising warmth and privacy unheard of in your cramped quarters. The contrast between your nightly rest and theirs is stark, reflecting not only economic disparities, but vastly different experiences of space, comfort, and safety. Their sleep is a refuge and a ritual. Yours is often a weary surrender to necessity. Noble beds were frequently elevated off the ground on wooden frames, sometimes intricately carved, protecting sleepers from damp floors and pests, a concern ever present in your hut. Fine linens were washed and replaced regularly, a luxury unimaginable in your daily life where clothes and bedding are worn to exhaustion. You might hear tales of servants tasked with preparing beds, fluffing pillows, and maintaining the perfect temperature through the addition or removal of furs and blankets. This attentive care extended the boundary between day and night work and rest in ways that shaped noble identity and power. The presence of attendants during sleep was another hallmark of noble life. Ladies-in-waiting valets or chambermaids might remain nearby, ready to respond to needs or threats. This constant attention underscored the importance of sleep as a controlled and protected space, ensuring physical renewal and social prestige. In contrast, your nights are solitary or shared only with family, without protection beyond the walls themselves and the watchful eyes of loved ones. Historians debate the extent to which such opulence influenced health and longevity. While the wealthy enjoyed better nutrition, sanitation, and medical care, sleeplessness and anxieties related to court life and political intrigue were common. The luxury of comfort did not guarantee peace of mind, though it often softened the harshness of bodily exhaustion. The social meanings attached to sleep in noble contexts were as significant as the physical realities entwining rest with status and power. You might imagine the rituals accompanying noble sleep, lavish baths to cleanse and soothe, the body prayers led by clergy or recited privately, the careful layering of garments and bedding to ensure comfort. These practices frame sleep as both necessity and ceremony, a time to reinforce social hierarchies, even in vulnerability. Such rituals created a stark boundary from the daily labor and hardships faced by peasants, a luxury you only glimpse through stories or rare encounters. Noble bedrooms often served multiple functions: private chambers for rest and intimacy spaces for receiving visitors, or venues for important political or familial discussions. The design and decoration reflected wealth, taste, and power, with tapestries, paintings, and ornate furniture creating environments far removed from the plain walls and simple furnishings of your hut. These surroundings communicated status as much as they provided comfort, embedding sleep within the broader social and cultural fabric. The disparities extend beyond physical comfort to the very experience of night and sleep. Nobles could afford protection from cold and pests, and their diet supported better health and energy. They were less exposed to the stresses of subsistence labor and food insecurity that color your nights with hunger and exhaustion. Their sleep is often uninterrupted, allowing for deeper rest and rejuvenation. In contrast, your sleep is fragmented, shaped by environmental discomforts and existential anxieties. Despite these differences, sleep remains a universal human experience, binding you to the noble and the peasant alike. Both realms navigate vulnerability and hope under the same stars, though the textures of their rest diverge sharply. This contrast deepens your understanding of medieval society's inequalities, illuminating the material and symbolic divisions that define daily life. You may also reflect on the ways nobles viewed peasants' sleep, often with disdain or pity, seeing their hardships as evidence of lower status or divine judgment. These attitudes reinforced social hierarchies and justified the structures of power that shaped your existence. Yet there were moments of recognition and empathy, especially among enlightened or reform-minded nobles who understood the value of labor and the humanity of those beneath them. The physical gap between peasant and noble sleep is bridged in literature and art, where poets and painters depict the contrasts and commonalities of human rest. These cultural expressions provide windows into medieval consciousness, revealing both social critique and idealization. You might have heard stories or seen images that capture these disparities, shaping your own sense of identity and aspiration. In your hut, the knowledge of these differences sharpens your awareness of your place in the world, but also fuels resilience and pride. The hardships endured nightly forged strength and community bonds that transcend material wealth. Your sleep, though harsh, is woven with the threads of shared experience, survival, and hope. As you drift into the fitful rest, your body demands the memory of noble beds serves as both contrast and aspiration. Yet it is here, among the straw smoke and whispered prayers, that your life unfolds, a testament to endurance and the indomitable spirit that carries you through the dark toward dawn. In the fragile stillness just before dawn, when the night's hold begins to loosen and the first pale light seeps through the cracks in your hut's walls, your thoughts drift to the quiet moments that define the space between exhaustion and awakening. It is in these liminal hours, suspended between dark and light, that fears mingle with hopes and the pressing realities of your life weigh most heavily. The night has tested your endurance through cold, hunger, pests, and uncertainty, but here in the fragile calm before the day's demands resume, you find a moment of fragile peace. The village is still save for the faint stirring of animals and the soft murmur of early risers. You listen to the mingling sounds, the distant crowing of roosters, the rustle of leaves, the breath of the world, as it prepares to awaken, and feel the pulse of life pressing gently against the fading darkness. Your body aches with weariness, limbs stiff from the hard straw and chill air, yet there is a deep primordial satisfaction in having survived another night. The small comforts, the warmth shared with family, the flicker of embers from the hearth, the whispered prayers said in faith linger as anchors in your consciousness. These elements of your nightly existence, though modest, are profound expressions of resilience and humanity. You recognize that survival is not merely about the physical act of rest, but also about the emotional and spiritual sustenance carried through these rituals and shared experiences. In this quiet dawn, you embrace the paradox of your life, hardship intertwined with hope, confinement with community, darkness with the promise of light. Historians continue to explore these moments of transition, recognizing their significance not only for individual well-being, but for the social and cultural rhythms of medieval peasant life. The interplay of light and shadow, wakefulness and sleep, marks more than a daily cycle. It embodies the tension between vulnerability and strength that defines your existence. These early morning moments are both an ending and a beginning, a threshold across which you and your community pass together. You recall the subtle changes in the hut as dawn approaches, the softening of shadows, the cooling of the air, the gradual silencing of nocturnal creatures. The smoke from the dying fire drifts lazily upward, its warmth retreating but still present. The animals stir gently, their breaths mingling with yours, a shared chorus welcoming the new day. The smells of earth and smoke, sweat and straw mingle with the fresh scents carried in on the morning breeze. These sensory details ground you in place and time, reinforcing your connection to the land and to those around you. The quiet before dawn also invites reflection and quiet prayer. You may find your thoughts turning inward, contemplating the challenges faced and those yet to come. Gratitude for survival mingles with anxiety for the day's labors and uncertainties. These moments of stillness provide space for mental and spiritual preparation, strengthening resolve and fostering hope. The collective experience of such dawns binds your community, creating a shared narrative of endurance and faith. Social roles and relationships come into sharp relief as the village awakens. Elders rise to tend to animals or begin domestic chores. Children prepare for another day of work or learning. Neighbors exchange greetings and news. The rhythms of communal life emerge gradually, each action a thread woven into the fabric of village existence. The shared experience of night's end reinforces social cohesion and mutual support, vital for facing the hardships ahead. You may also sense the weight of history in these moments, the countless dawns witnessed by your ancestors, the cycles of life and death, struggle and renewal that shape your lineage. This awareness connects you to a continuum beyond your individual life, a collective story inscribed in land memory and ritual. The dawn becomes a symbol of persistence, a daily reaffirmation of humanity's capacity to endure and hope. Despite the hardships etched into your nights and days, you find strength in these quiet mornings. The intimate knowledge of suffering and survival fosters resilience and a deep appreciation for life's fragile gifts. Each dawn is a victory, a testament to your will and the support of your community. This enduring spirit carries you forward even when the path ahead seems uncertain. As the first rays of sunlight brighten the village and the sounds of morning grow louder, you prepare to rise. The night's trials recede into memory, making way for the work and challenges of the day. Yet the lessons and solace of night remain with you, woven into your being. You carry the quiet strength of the dark hours as a shield and a beacon. In this way, the medieval peasant's night is both a crucible and a sanctuary, a time of hardship and healing, isolation and connection, fear and faith. Your rest, though imperfect and brief, sustains you, shaping your body and spirit for the continuing journey. The night's end holds promise, a gentle whisper of renewal, and the unbroken chain of life stretching through time.